Chapter 26, The Demon Created by Zeref is Dangerous. What kind of job did that kid Evan take? Makarov came to the S-Class job board on the second floor. Looking at the clean and tidy job lists, Makarov scratched his thinning hair in confusion, because he didn't see which job did Evan take on? Could it be that Evan took an ordinary job? No, only this is absolutely impossible. He is definitely not the kind of quiet person. Makarov himself wanted to go to the ordinary job board at the bottom, but after thinking about it, Evan is the kind of person who can mix with guildarts, and he will never finish those low-level jobs in an orderly manner. But it is true that no one has touched the S-Class job list. Could it be? Thinking of this, Makarov seemed to have guessed something. He was startled, and then hurriedly ran to the request board where SS-Class and even higher-level jobs are stored. It wasn't until Makarov arrived at the request board that he realized that the request board that hadn't been cleaned up in the past few years had been cleaned very well, and that there was indeed a job list missing on the request board full of jobs. Sure enough. Evan is an idiot. Makarov looked at the disappearing job list and cursed. I remember this job is. Hey, that's strange, why can't I remember? Obviously it's on my lips, but I just can't remember it. Looking at the vacancy in front of him, Makarov thought hard, and began to think about which job he put here, but the job list here is really too long. He thought hard for a long time, but he still couldn't remember it. Guildmaster. Evan is at the registration office and registered the jobs he is going to perform. Just as Makarov was breaking his head, Mikhail's voice sounded from downstairs. Hey! Hearing Mikhail's shout, Makarov jumped down immediately, came to Mikhail's body, and asked, which job did Evan go on? The job that Evan is going to do is. Guildmaster, let's see for yourself. Mikhail looked at Makarov with some hesitation. After thinking for a while, he put the job filling form in front of Makarov. This is. Makarov stared wide-eyed at the job filling form that Mikhail handed him with Evan's name on it. This is, the crusade against Deliera. That idiot Evan. He actually chose this job. It doesn't matter who it is, get Evan back for me quickly. That job is not something that Evan can do now. Makarov looked at the job that Evan chose, and felt that his lungs were about to explode. Demon Deliera, a powerful demon created by the legendary black mage Zeref. According to historical records, the continent of Deliera has a history of hundreds of years. If there is no powerful senior mage who sacrificed his life to seal the demon, it is unknown what kind of damage will be caused to the continent. However, the original Deliera's seal was broken by someone for unknown reasons more than 10 years ago. Bringing this demon Deliera back to life, he destroyed a town on the first day he broke the seal, which is really extremely cruel. It fully shows the evil demon style created by the black wizard Zeref. In other words, the job that Evan accepted to defeat the demon Deliera was not an SS-class job, but a genuine 10-year job. Even if Deliera hadn't been sealed by the mage and only recently unsealed, it would be possible to be given a higher level by the Magic Council. As long as jobs of this level are completed, they will be awarded the title of 10 Wizard Saints Mages by the Magic Council immediately. Guildmaster, aren't you making too much of a fuss? Evan is a tie with guildarts. I can hardly imagine any job in this world that Evan cannot complete. Mikhail looked at the anxious Makarov, and softly persuaded him. Idiot! Is it a trivial matter to defeat the great demon created by Zeref? Even the 10 Wizard Saints may not be able to do it. Even though Evan's strength is extraordinary, he's still too young and inexperienced. In case he gets hit by some weird magic, accidents will inevitably happen. Makarov didn't question Evan's strength. He was worried that Evan's lack of experience would cause him to make a mistake in his prediction. When dealing with the demon created by the black wizard Zeref, any small mistake would be fatal. No, I have to find Evan back. Mikhail, the matters in the guild are temporarily entrusted to you. If there is a problem, find a way to solve it first, and wait for me to come back to deal with it. Makarov looked nervous. He said a word to Mikhail, and ran out of the guild to chase after Evan. Hand it over, leave it to me. Mikhail didn't expect that Makarov would hand over the guild's affairs to him, so he felt a little elated. Could it be that the guild master means to train me as the next generation guild master? As Mikhail said, he had already fantasized in his mind that he would become the guild master of Fairy Tale, arrogantly driving the members to do things for him. Hey! I'm going to perform a job. Not long after Makarov left the guild, Laxus stood up from his seat. He was going to carry out a job, and He planned to take advantage of Makarov's absence and try to complete the S-class job. That. Mikhail looked at Laxus and wanted to say something. What? Laxus frowned, and golden lightning flashed on him. It's okay. Mikhail looked at the angry Laxus, frightened his neck, and took a few steps back. In such a split second, his dream of being the guild master was shattered. It's fine. As Laxus said, with his hands in his pockets, he jumped directly to the second floor, and came to the S-class job board, ready to find an S-class job that suits him. At the same time, Urza used communication magic to link with Irene. Irene, big problem, bad, big brother Evan is going to attack Deliara. Urza told Irene exactly what she heard. Urza, you should call me mother. Irene first corrected Urza's address, and then she and Urza got to know about Deliola. So what exactly is this Deliara thing? Deliara seems to be a demon created by the black wizard Ziref. I heard that the strength is extraordinary, and it is very cruel. It has destroyed many towns and has been active in the mainland for more than 10 years, but it still hasn't been killed by the mage. The mages who went to crusade against Deliara, but all of them failed. Big brother Evan, he won't. Urza told Irene the rumors she had heard about Deliara. Ah? Ziref, so that's the case. I heard some rumors about Ziref. So, the cats and dogs he created can kill people. After thinking about it, Irene asked Urza suspiciously. Urza. Irene was puzzled. She had lived in the continent of Ishgar all these years, and she had seen demons who claimed to be the books of Ziref, but they were all small things, and they were killed with a single slap by her. Chapter 27, Laxus vs Urza. Urza, rest assured. With Evan's strength, he won't be killed by those small characters. With a relaxed tone, Irene dispelled Urza's worries about Evan. I see. Urza nodded, indicating that she understood, and then closed the communication with Irene. Eden. After Irene finished communicating with Urza, she softly called Eden's name. Master Irene, your subordinates are here. Immediately, Eden slowly walked out of the shadows, then knelt down on one knee in front of Irene. Go catch up with Evan and protect his safety. If you encounter a dangerous situation that you can't deal with, call me in time. Irene sat on the sofa, with her beautiful legs crossed, and gave orders to Eden. Obey. After receiving Irene's order, Eden immediately disappeared into the bakery. Although Irene said that there is no need to worry about Evan's safety, in fact, she is more worried about Evan than anyone else, so she sent Eden to protect Evan. In this way, in case of emergency, she can also be the first one to come to Evan's side. On the other side, in the Fairy Tale Guild, Laxus quickly selected the S-class job he planned to complete. He accepted the job, jumped lightly, and landed on the ground floor, preparing to wait until his grandfather Makarov, and when Evan came back, he would give them a surprise. Laxus, you are not an S-class mage, so you can't perform S-class jobs. Mikhail looked at Laxus who accepted the S-class job without authorization, and quickly stood up to block him. For S-class jobs, the difficulty of each job is fundamentally different from other jobs. One might be fatal. Mikhail cannot allow Laxus to risk his life. Mind your own business. Laxus glanced at Mikhail, his eyes were full of disdain. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with the weak in the guild. Laxus, since Guildmaster Makarov has given me the responsibility of guarding the guild, then I won't let your temper mess around. As Mikhail said, his eyes gradually became sharper, and there were flames around his body. What? Want to fight, uncle? Laxus looked at Mikhail who dared to disobey him with a bit of displeasure, and thunderbolts continued to shine around him. Boy! Don't look down upon your senior. Mikhail has sharp eyes. After all, he is a senior mage of Fairy Tale, but he is not as weak as everyone imagined. In other guild standards, he also has the possibility of being promoted to S-rank mage. Mikhail and Laxus are going to fight. Things are starting to get interesting. The members of the guild gradually became excited as they watched Mikhail and Laxus confront each other. Boom! In the next second, thunder resounded. Ah, damn it! This brat, isn't he too strong? Mikhail staggered and fell to the ground after being shocked, with black smoke coming out of his mouth. Mikhail, I told you not to overwork yourself. Wakaba, with a cigarette in his mouth, looked at the fallen Mikhail and said helplessly. His old friend is also true. He knew that Laxus was a genuine monster. Although he was young, he had completely surpassed them in strength, but he still went to make trouble for himself. He's only 13 years old. He's just a monster. Macau felt like crying. It was a shame to be defeated by a 13-year-old brat. But on second thought, this brat is the grandson of the guild master Makarov. It seems to be acceptable. Tisk. Laxus looked at Macau, who was instantly defeated by him, and curled his lips in disdain. He randomly put the S-class job list in the pocket of his trousers behind his buttocks, put his hands in his pockets, and was about to leave the guild. He has no time to waste, he has to become stronger as soon as possible, and then challenge Evangelist. Hey! Little bastard! Don't challenge the guild's rules and regulations. Just as Laxus was about to leave, Urza, who had finished talking with Irene, blocked Laxus' way. Tisk, are you a disciplinary committee member? Laxus couldn't help complaining about Urza, who blocked his way forward. By the way, the first person in this guild who violated the rules and regulations was none other than your idiot brother. Urza. After Laxus finished complaining, he yelled at Urza. Big brother Evan's affairs will be handled by the guild master. Now I'm only talking about your affairs. Right now, don't try to violate the rules and regulations in front of my eyes. Holding a sharp sword in her hand, Urza spoke to Laxus. You are annoying. Forget it, just in time. There should be a victory or defeat between you and me. This time, no old man will intervene to save you. Just let me beat you to the ground, and then go to perform S-class jobs. As Laxus said, bursts of golden lightning flashed all over his body. You who violate the rules and regulations will not be able to defeat the sword in my hand. Urza holds a sharp blade in her hand and smiles on her face. The sword in her hand instantly becomes haki with a jet-black armament haki. Let's not talk about Laxus, who is almost 14 years old. Even Urza, who just turned 10 years old, can't beat her. Macau. Wakaba looked at the fierce battle between Laxus and Urza, complained to Macau, who was lying on the ground. Yes, damn it. Macau felt that his self-esteem had suffered a critical blow. Is there any bet open? The bet's on Urza. Then I will bet on Laxus. Just as Macau and Wakaba were lying on the ground discussing their lives, the members of the guild once again watched the fun and started gambling. Okay, Macau, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. As soon as Wakaba saw the start of the bet, he immediately left his friend behind, took out his 10,000 private money, and turned towards the person who set up the bet. I bet 10,000 J Laxus to win. Bastard! How is money more important than a brother? Macau looked at Wakaba, who had abandoned him, and shouted angrily. He stood up with all his strength, and then rushed to the person who set up the gamble, roaring, 100,000 J Urza will win. Macau wants revenge. But I advise you, you need to be more cautious, be careful not to lose your fortune, and then be forced to sleep on the rooftop. A guild member reminded Macau. Stop talking nonsense. The battle just now was my carelessness. But I'm serious about the gamble. The corners of Macau's mouth turned up. Others can question that he is not a professional mage, but they must not question his identity as a dog gambler. He is a professional dog gambler. Oh! All of a sudden, Fairy Tale became lively again. Disappear. Urza. It's you who is going to disappear. Laxus. Drinking, fighting, singing, dancing. It's another happy day. Chapter 28, Dur and Grey. I've been defeated. Laxus. Kana, who was wearing a white long dress with small lace, looked at Laxus, who was lying on the floor of the guild, looking at the ceiling, wondering what he was thinking, and laughed. Tch, mind your own business, Kana. After seeing the person coming, Laxus turned his swollen face away from the beating. He. Looking at your bad luck recently, do you want me to do a divination for you? Kana took out the card in her hand, covered her face, and said with a smirk. Tch, since you insist on doing it, then I will try to cooperate with you as much as I can. But let me tell you in advance. I don't believe in your divination. Laxus turned his head and looked reluctant, but Kana was too enthusiastic, so he reluctantly agreed. Let me see. Wow, Laxus, you are really unlucky. The card shows that if you do S-level jobs, you will be in bad luck. Kana spoke softly according to the hint she got from the card magic. Is there such a thing? Laxus, who was originally disdainful, immediately turned around, with a hint of nervousness in his expression. I mean, I'm not feeling well today, so I won't be performing S-level jobs for now. Laxus sat up from the ground as he spoke, and walked towards the outside of the guild. As for the S-level job in his hand, it was snatched away by Urza, and then reposted on the S-level request board on the second floor. He. Kana looked at Laxus' appearance of pretending to be unrestrained but hurriedly leaving in shock. Kana covered her mouth with a card, and smiled secretly. TL note, fortune telling, Uranai using the very same cards she employs for her magic card, Kana seems capable of reading fortunes, similar to real forms of fortune telling performed through tarot cards, and appears to be fairly skilled at it, having foreseen Lucy Hartfilia would met a special person, something which did happen. Kana started developing this peculiar ability during her younger days in Fairy Tale, when she desperately longed to confess to Gildarts Clive that she was his daughter, but was stopped by his continuous absences from the guild and by her own shyness. In order to know when Gildarts would be back, she started practicing fortune-telling, something which eventually led her to take up magic card as her primary magic. After Laxus left, it was Macau who earned a lot of money. At this moment, he was constantly mocking Wakaba. Ha, what did I say? I am a professional in gambling. What are you proud of? You just got lucky. Wakaba's face was distorted. Macau made money, which made him feel worse that he wants to kill him. It's a bit noisy, I can't calm down and choose jobs. In front of the ordinary job board, Urza suffered some minor scratches, and her eyes flashed quickly over the jobs published on the board, looking for a suitable job. This job seems to be very suitable for me. After a long while, Urza picked up a reward after completing the job, which was a job list of rare armor, and said to herself. A few days later, Evan had already got off the train with his luggage on his back, and in front of him was a snowy mountain range. Next, we will continue to move in the northeast direction. The air is getting colder. Evan looked at the map in his hand and talked to himself. The kingdom of Fiori, where Fairy Tale is located in the southwest of the Ishgar continent, facing the western continent, so once the Ziref Empire launches an attack on Ishgar, Fairy Tale in the kingdom of Fiori will bear the brunt. And the place where Deliura was active was in the relatively cold northeast of Ishgar, which was already outside the sphere of influence of the kingdom of Fiori. Hey! Evan let out a white breath, followed the map in his hand, and walked towards the pitch-black mountains. There would be no such convenient means of transportation as trains on the road ahead. At night, when the last train arrived at Monet, a city on the northeast coast of the city, a short old man jumped off the train. He closed his eyes tightly, feeling the magic power flowing in the air, showing a bit of helplessness. Is it still a step too late? Damn it, doesn't that brat Evan need to rest? This little old man is Makarov, the head of the Fairy Tale Guild who came after Evan. Originally, he wanted to intercept Evan in advance, but Evan was moving too fast, basically a train without any stops. It can be seen that before departure, Evan had studied the train schedule, and then chose an optimal route. It's getting too late, I can't catch up now, let's take a rest first. Makarov thought so, and came to a nearby hotel to stay. And Evan is still moving forward. The Zoan fish fruit phantom beast species blue dragon form brings Evan strong physical and mental strength, so that he will not feel tired even if he does not sleep for 5 days. If Evan is not afraid of his condition, so Evan chose to fly at full speed to find Deliura. 2 weeks later, in a pale and endless snow-covered mountain, a young man is lying in the snow swaggeringly. The young man is a little embarrassed, as if he just had a fight with something, and he is falling asleep because of being too exhausted. Roar! Not long after, a huge white bear that seemed to blend in with the whole environment found it by smell. The boy who was lying in the snow sleeping soundly, the giant bear opened its bloody mouth without any hesitation and about to bite down on the boy lying in the snow. What? It was also at the moment when the giant bear opened his mouth that the boy opened his eyes. What are you going to do? The young man looked at the giant bear with its bloody mouth wide open, and frowned. For a moment, there seemed to be a red light, with an overwhelming aura, bursting out from the young man's eyes. Woo! The giant bear, which was nearly 5 meters tall, showed a look of fear the moment he saw the young man open his eyes, and beads of sweat continued to flow from around his nose and lips. For a moment, the boy in the eyes of the giant bear changed drastically. In the eyes of the giant bear, the boy was no longer a child the size of a bean, but a head hundreds of meters long, and the head alone was a horror the size of a small house. The dragon is opening its mouth wide enough to swallow him in one gulp, roaring continuously. Fear arising from biological instinct. The giant bear turned over immediately, like a puppy, with its limbs facing the sky, sticking out its tongue, and showing a flattering expression at the same time. Good boy. The boy gently stroked the giant bear's head, then took out a piece of charcoal from his pocket, and placed it in front of the giant bear's nose. Sniff. The giant bear seemed to understand what the boy meant, and immediately sniffed it vigorously, then stood up and adjusted its direction. Set off. The boy jumped lightly, landed on the giant bear's body, and then patted the giant bear's head lightly. Roar. Like a happy husky, the giant bear headed towards the direction with the strongest smell left on the charcoal the boy fed him. As for the young man riding a giant bear, it was Evan who followed Deliura almost across the entire continent of Ishgar. In a city in the north that is always covered by ice and snow. A beautiful woman with short black hair, a delicate face, and a curvy figure is wearing underwear. She is practicing ice make magic on the ice and snow. Behind her are two teenagers who look about 8 or 9 years old, wearing underwear, practicing magic with her. The three of them seemed to ignore the biting cold wind, and let the cold wind blow on their bodies, but they still didn't feel any discomfort. A few hours later, after the three of them finished training, a young man with short black hair sat in the white snow, looked at the beautiful woman and said, I found out where Deliura is, and I want to seek revenge on him. Hey! The beautiful woman punched the boy on the head and said angrily, Idiot! Your current strength is still too immature in front of Deliura, and you want to seek revenge. Let's talk about it after you defeat me. I'm already very strong. The young man looked at the beautiful woman stubbornly, his eyes were full of anger. Deliura destroyed his town, killed his parents, and he had a blood feud with that demon. No, just don't. After the beautiful woman finished speaking, she didn't give the boy a chance to continue talking, and put on the clothes on the ground. She planned to go to the town to buy some delicious food for her two apprentices. Dozens of minutes later, when the beautiful woman walks away. Damn! The young man covered his head with tears in his eyes. Gray, calm down. Said it for our own good. Beside the black-haired boy, who has short white hair and looks older than the black-haired boy, softly persuaded him. Lion, you don't understand anything. Even without Ur's help, I can kill Deliura by myself. The black-haired boy named Gray pushed away the white-haired boy Lion, who was persuading him with good words, and rushed towards the direction he had inquired about where Deliura was haunting. Gray! It's not good, I have to tell Ur about this. Lion looked at Gray who was advancing at full speed, his eyes were full of anxiety. After thinking for a while, he decided to go down the mountain to find Ur. Hey, can it be cheaper? This is already the cheapest price, okay. This is really difficult. In the town, Ur is negotiating with fruit vendors, because it has been covered by ice and snow for a long time, there is no shortage of fish and meat, but there is only a lack of fresh fruits and vegetables, which are shipped from the warm south. It will be very expensive to get here. It's not good. Gray went to find Deliura. Just as Ur was thinking about how to buy what she wanted cheaply, Lion's voice suddenly came from a distance. What? Ur panicked when she heard the words, and she frowned. Gray, that idiot. Lion, you stay here. I'm going to find Gray. After Ur finished speaking, she directly threw the purchased food in her hand to Lion, and then ran towards the town where it was rumored that Deliura passed by with a panicked expression. The other side. Evan, who was riding a white bear, also came to the vicinity of the town where Deliura was located. Chapter 29, Ur and Deliura. Damn it, I can't just watch Ur and Gray attack Deliura. I can't miss this opportunity. I have already learned that super powerful magic. Even if something happens, I will definitely be able to help Ur. Standing in place and constantly pacing back and forth, Lion, with short white hair, had a decision in his heart. Without any hesitation, Lion ran towards the town where Deliura was located. On the snow-covered streets. Not long after Lion advanced, he heard a burst of rhythmic footsteps behind him. Is there anyone else going forward? No, I have to stop him. Thinking of this, Lion immediately turned around, and shouted to the snowy sky behind him, People behind, don't move forward, the front is very dangerous. There's a demon traveling. Demon? Sure enough, this feeling is Deliura. However, not only did the sound of footsteps not weaken because of Lion's shouting, but it became stronger and stronger. At the same time, Lion also gradually saw clearly what the thing that was running and making squeaking noises on the snow. It was a monster nearly 5 meters tall. When the giant beast found Lion, its speed began to weaken, and then it slowly appeared in front of Lion. Lion felt the terrifying oppression of the giant beast in front of him, and his heart trembled. When he saw the appearance of the giant beast clearly, he sat down on the ground in fear. He saw a huge bear staring at him. Scary monster. Lion looked at the big bear and preached fearfully. It's not a monster. I am a mage of fairy tale. Just as Lion watched the giant bear trembling with fright, a delicate and handsome face appeared on the top of the giant bear's head. Mage. Lion stared blankly at the boy who was riding a giant bear and who was about his age. Yes. I accepted the crusade job to slay Deliara. Young man, listening to what you just said. In other words, Deliara is not far ahead, right? The boy was of course Evan, who came here to fight against Deliara. At this moment, he looked at Lion under him and asked. To be honest, since he stepped into this range, in his perception, there are 2 huge energy clusters different from ordinary people. According to Evan's guess, the slightly weaker one is probably Ur, and the slightly stronger one should be Deliara ahead. Yes. He's in that direction. As Lion spoke, he pointed out the way for Evan. Thank you. After thanking Lion, Evan prepared to ride the giant bear to attack Deliara. That. Mr. Mage, please bring me with you. Just when Evan was about to ride the giant bear to look for Deliara, the white-haired Lion looked at the boy and begged. Sure. After listening to Lion's words, Evan, who closed his eyes tightly to sense the energy ahead, nodded slightly after thinking for a few seconds. Immediately afterwards, the giant bear slowly lay down. Come on. Boy. Evan sat cross-legged on top of the giant bear, and spoke to Lion. Lion was a little scared, but finally climbed on top of the giant bear. Roar. Dark night. A huge demon with a height of nearly 10 meters and a ferocious face walked in the town. As the monster advances, corpses are strewn all over the place, and the town is reduced to ruins. Run! Countless townspeople kept running away. In front of that huge monster, all resistance seemed negligible. Even the powerful mages had already died at the hands of this monster, and all of them died in an instant. This caused the residents in the town to almost collapse. Deliara, here I come. However, among the countless fleeing crowd, there was a boy who looked to be about 8 or 9 years old, who rushed towards the monster against the flow of people. It was Grey who came. Roar! The monster seemed to have noticed the little ant roaring at him. He was very angry. He was a demon created by the great giraffe. The monster roared angrily, stomped its feet randomly, and countless cracks appeared on the ground, attacking Grey. Ice make, floor. Grey's eyes were extremely cold. Facing the monster's attack, he responded calmly. First, he froze the ground to give himself a point of strength, and then jumped high, performing another molding magic. Ice make, lance. A cold spear appeared in Grey's hand, and then flew towards the demon. How about this move? Grey looked at his strongest molding magic, showing a hint of complacency. Facing the 2-meter-long ice spear made by Grey, Deliara just slapped it casually, like slapping a mosquito, and slapped it into countless pieces. Then, he came behind Grey and opened his blooded big mouth. Roar! A huge sound wave roared out from Deliara's mouth. He fixed his eyes on Grey below him, and at the same time raised his right hand. Why is it like this? Grey looked at Deliara, who was emitting a fierce light in front of him, and knelt directly on the ground. His body was motionless, trembling, and his eyes were full of fear. That was his strongest magic, but it couldn't cause even the slightest harm to Deliara. Who? Without waiting for Gradu to think, with a howling sound, Deliara's attack landed directly. Boom! Under a burst of flying sand and rocks, a thin figure resolutely blocked Grey. Woo! Grey looked at the figure who blocked the attack instead of him, and tears kept rolling in his eyes. Grey took a deep breath and called out the name of the woman who saved him. It was his teacher who came. Damn beast, the strength is not small. Took a deep breath, looked at her broken leg, and knew that she couldn't run anymore. Ice make, Rose Garden. Didn't hesitate, and directly released the molding magic. Endless freezing air was released from Ur's hands, completely freezing half of the street, and at the same time freezing the mighty Deliara. Successful. Gray looked at Ur, who froze Deliura in one shot, and opened his eyes wide. He knew that his master was the strongest. Roar! However, before Gray could be happy, the huge demon Deliura roared angrily, ejecting a terrifying energy beam from his mouth. It directly destroyed the ice around the body completely, and at the same time completely destroyed the street behind Ur. Damn it! Ur looked at the unharmed Deliura, his eyes trembled. Ice make, Rosenkrone! While Ur was feeling the strength of Deliura in her heart, her hands kept moving. For a moment, the ice and snow collided with Deliura's terrifying spell power. Endless power, makes the whole street torn apart. Just like that, the mighty Ur and Deliura fought fiercely for dozens of rounds. When Ur's strongest ice shape briefly frozen Deliura for a few seconds, what appeared in front of everyone was an unharmed and terrifying demon. Too strong. Ur frowned as he looked at Deliura, who was able to stand up again no matter how powerful her magic was withstood. If she was in her prime, she would still be able to fight Deliura. It is still unknown who will win the battle in the end, but now, if she wants to save her beloved apprentice, she can only use that trick. Ugh! Gray looked at his master, wanting to say something else. He saw the injuries Ur had suffered to protect him, and his heart ached. Gray, you are really brave. For my apprentice, I have a reason to continue fighting. As Ur said, amazing magic power erupted from her body. Ur! Gray looked at Ur with a nervous expression. Gray, actually, I still have a magic trick that I haven't taught you, because if possible, I hope you will never use this trick. Absolute ice magic that completely seals the target at the cost of the caster's magical body. As Ur said, an astonishingly powerful magic power erupted in her body. This will be Ur's last move, and also her strongest magic. Combining the disappearing attribute with molding magic, it is a genuine super magic. Ur! Tears flowed from Gray's eyes. In his eyes, his master Ur was the strongest mage, and his master would never be defeated. Chapter 30, Separating Devil Attribute. Gravito Raging Tiger. Just when Ur was about to say goodbye to his apprentice Gray, a huge gravitational wave formed a ferocious giant tiger and bit Deliura. TL note, Moko, Mko, literally meaning fierce tiger Fujitora generates immense levels of gravitational forces around him that push out horizontally, which knock away anything in its path, including his enemies, buildings, trees, and whatever else that is unfortunate enough to be in the attack radius. The force is so strong that it easily destroys the ground and buildings, reducing them to rubble. While using this technique, the gravitational force generates black lightning as a visual effect around Fujitora. It was first used against Sabo. This is called Raging Tiger in the Viz manga and Funimation adaptations. The name of this technique is a reference to Isho's epithet, Fujitora, which means Wisteria Tiger. In an instant, Deliura, the street under Deliura's feet, the street behind him, and the high snow-capped mountains behind the street were all distorted in front of this terrifying gravitational wave. Boom! Immediately followed by a roar, Deliura was accidentally hit by this terrifying gravity wave and flew into the sky. Half of the street and the towering tower behind him flew into the sky along with Deliura and some mountains. The streets, mountains, and mountains have all disappeared. Gray, with black shattered hair, looked at the disappearing mountain, opened his mouth wide, and his eyes were full of disbelief. Ah, what amazing magical power! Even Ur's eyes widened in shock after seeing the huge gravitational wave blasting into the sky with Deliura, the street, and the mountain together. Leave this to me. Accompanied by a slightly immature voice, an afterimage flew past Ur and rushed towards Deliura in the sky. Ha ha ha! Immediately afterwards, Gray felt a burst of rapid breathing sounded behind him. This is... When Gray heard the sound, he turned around tremblingly, and what he saw was a huge snow-white beast clinging to him, panting continuously. The heavy breathing sound was exactly that of the beast. There is another demon. Gray looked pale with fright at the beast. Gray. Ur looked at the beast behind Gray, and ice froze in his hands. Gray, it's me. Don't be afraid, Dab, I won't hurt anyone. Just when Ur was about to make a move, a white figure appeared on the beast's head. As if to verify what the white figure said, the huge beast moved its head in front of Gray, stuck out its tongue, and licked Gray's body again and again. Gray looked at the beast in a daze, and then looked at the white figure above the beast's head, his eyes full of puzzlement. Lion. Ur stared blankly at the white figure on the head of the beast, but she still put away the magic she was going to release, and after confirming that the beast was not malicious, she turned to the white figure on the head of the beast. She asked to Lion, another apprentice of hers, "Didn't I tell you not to come, Lion?" It's like this." As Lion said, he was about to explain to her what was going on. Boom! However, before he finished speaking, there was an explosion sound in the air, and a dark figure was seen, clasped his hands together. Instantly there were countless flames, and thunder struck Deliura in the air. Roar! Deliura, who couldn't dodge, wailed in pain instantly. "Who is that person?" Dora looked at the black figure in the air and her pupils shrank suddenly. She could feel the majestic vitality in that figure's body, as well as the magical power like a vast ocean. "That's Brother Evan, a fairy tale mage, who's here to subjugate Deliura." Lion stood on the head of the giant white bear, looking at the figure constantly releasing magic in the sky, and the eyes full of little stars. The mage of fairy tale. Someone actually accepted the job to hunt down Deliura. Dora's expression was moved when she heard the familiar guild name. As a mage, Dora knew the danger level of Deliura, which surpassed the SS level job and was called the 10-year job level. Could it be that some strong man who ranks among the 10 wizard saints made a move? Dora looked solemn. In her opinion, the only ones on this continent who are capable of dealing with Deliura are those who are ranked among the 10 wizard saints. Enchant to the air, solid state. Enchant to the air, hard. Enchantment magic, sky cage. In the sky, Evan calmly cast magic on Deliura. In an instant, the air around Deliura suddenly froze, and Deliura was controlled in the sky like this. No matter how he moved, he couldn't break through Evan's enchantment magic. Roar! After Deliura tried a few times but couldn't get his body out of the air, he opened his mouth, and an infinite amount of magic power gathered towards his mouth. Separation mantra. Evan saw Deliura, who was about to unleash his excitement, perform separating magic. In fact, the idea of this move came from Irene, but Evan used it directly. Roar! Deliura, who was gathering magic power, suddenly felt that the magic power in his body disappeared. His eyes widened. For the first time, emotions other than anger appeared in those eyes full of anger, which was called puzzlement. "I see. Is this the power used by the devil?" Evan looked at the dark energy ball in his hand and fell into deep thought. Hee. Immediately afterwards, the corners of Evan's mouth rose slightly, and he whispered to Deliura, "Deliura, I will accept your power. Enchant." As Evan said, he directly enchanted the dark power to his body. Since the Dragon Slayer magic was created by Irene, and its principle is to enchant the power of the dragon to the human body, so that humans have the power to compete with the dragon, then the Devil Slayer magic and the God Slayer magic are probably the same. That is to attach the power of demons and gods to human beings, so that human beings have the same physique as demons and gods, so as to able to destroy demons and gods. Of course, Evan was not sure whether her experiment would be successful. He originally thought that if it failed, he could just activate another separation enchantment again. But fortunately, Evan succeeded. The moment Evan enchanted the power of the devil, his body was covered with jet black lines, and he looked like a ferocious devil. At the same time, Deliura, who was watching this scene, was completely stunned. Next is the second step. Evan remembers that first generation of lost magic had great disadvantages, just like a dragon slayer eventually makes you become a giant dragon. If you use too much lost magic, you will eventually become a part of the species you wiped out. Therefore, Evan intends to eliminate this disadvantage, and the way to eliminate this disadvantage is secondary enchantment. Evan tried to attach the devil power in his body to his own devil fruit. Evan's inspiration for this came from the second-generation dragon slayers. The second-generation dragon slayers buried the dragon lacrima, which is the heart of the dragon, in their body to help them use the magic of destroying attributes and at the same time ensure that they would not transform into a dragon. Devil fruit is a very miraculous thing. Every devil fruit is alive, and while becoming one with the host, it also maintains its independence. This happens to be the same as the dragon lacrima. So, when Evan saw his system bar, the devil fruit bar, Paramecia, press fruit, LV8, plus, has become Paramecia press fruit, devil slaying LV8, plus. Evan knew that he had succeeded. With this prefix, Evan can use the power of Devil Slayer unscrupulously without worrying about being assimilated by the power of the demons. As for whether the devil fruit will be assimilated, anyway, the devil fruit also has the prefix of the word devil slaying. He wasn't worried, instead looked forward to whether there would be some wonderful chemical reactions between the Devil Slayer magic and the Devil Fruit. At the same time, Evan can still feel that the original upper limit of the Devil Fruit level, that is, the upper limit of level 10, has been successfully broken as Evan adds the attributes of the Devil Fruit. After upgrading to level 10, he can move towards higher levels. Chapter 31, Slay Deliura. Now Deliura, what other means do you have? Just use it and let me see. After getting acquainted with his own power to slay devils, Evan looked at Deliura and spoke in a cold voice. Deliura struggled for a while, and found that it was impossible to break through Evan's sky cage, and there was no extra magic power to condense and arouse. It immediately lay on the ground motionless as if it had fallen apart, and looked at Evan coldly. So you've tried your best? Evan stared blankly at the motionless Deliura, and then realized that the demon in front of him had exhausted its strength. If I had known that you were no more than this level, I shouldn't have wasted time. Instead, I would have maximized my observation haki at once, locked onto you before you wreak havoc, and then flew directly over to destroy you. Evan shook his head as he looked at Deliura, who had no strength and no power to resist. Originally, he remembered that Deliura could overwhelm or who possessed the strength of the 10 wizard saints, so it should be very strong, so Evan kept adjusting his state, and at the same time simulated the battle scenes after meeting Deliura countless times in his brain, and at the same time, he has developed more than 30 tactics to deal with Deliura, but as a result, he overblown it. Although Deliura gave him the feeling that it was strong, it was not that strong, at least far weaker than Gildart's. No, it's not that Deliura is too weak, but that I imagined Deliura to be too strong. When Evan thought of this, his originally frowning brows loosened. It wasn't that Deliura was too weak. In fact, Deliura, who had the power to defeat Ur, was definitely considered strong, even among all the demons created by Zeref. Among them, the destructive power should be ranked high, but even so, Deliura is still not as strong as Evan, who has reached the 8th level of all attributes. Goodbye, Deliura. While speaking, Evan raised his hand and at the same time activated his Press Fruit ability. The Press Fruit that immediately merged with the power of the devil released a jet black gravity light. Next second, there seems to be fire falling from the sky in the sky. It's like a sun rising slowly, cutting through this endless and long night. That is. What? On the ground, accompanied by the entangled firelight in the sky, illuminating the earth, and the huge rocks that kept falling, the eyes of countless refugees who raised their heads and prayed widened. Is it a miracle? Some refugees fell to their knees on the ground and opened their mouths in surprise. The stars are falling from the sky. The child looked at the sky and showed an innocent smile. What is that? Is it also magic? The magic of summoning stars. Gray and Lion stared at the sky, their eyes widened. They had never seen such magic before, and it surpassed their understanding of magic. It's probably a type of heavenly body magic, and it's the super magic that stands at the pinnacle of heavenly body magic. It has the name of true heavenly body magic, Sema. It's a super magic that summons meteors to completely destroy the enemy. It's a magic that can only be mastered by those who are at the top of the entire Ishgar continent and who are known as the 10 Wizard Saints. Dura looked at the huge meteor that fell from the sky and grew bigger and bigger in their eyes. Her pupils trembled, and beads of sweat kept rolling down her cheeks. Even if she faced this level of magic, she might not necessarily possess it. Ability to protect oneself. Summon meteors and completely destroy the enemy. That mage is also so stupid. Gray and Lion seemed to have forgotten where they were. They looked up at the meteor that was getting closer and closer, and complained loudly. Not good. With beads of sweat on Ur's face, she protected Gray and Lion behind her, and then put her hands in a posture of ice make magic. Immediately, a huge wall of ice appeared in front of Ur. I hope this can withstand the impact for a while. Ur looked at the meteor falling from the sky, feeling very worried. Boom! It was also at the moment when Ur was worried that the meteor fell from the sky. It landed directly over Deliura. At this time, Deliura was like a resident who escaped from the city on the ground, its eyes widened and it remained motionless. Don't wait for Deliura's reaction. Accompanied by a roar, the meteor that fell from the sky together with Deliura, slammed into the high mountain outside the town. Immediately after the meteor collided with the mountain peak, accompanied by a terrifying explosion, Deliura was crushed and smashed together with the mountain peak. Terrifying waves of air rushed in all directions. The violent blast swept across half of the town, rolling up countless ruins. Dora leaned back against the wall with a tense expression, holding Grey and Lion in her arms, and shouted at Grey and Lion at the same time, "Grab my arm tightly, don't get blown away." "Okay." Grey and Lion nodded slightly, their hands were tightly held together, and they leaned into Dora's arms. 10 minutes later, after the aftermath dissipated. Only then did Grey and Lion reveal their small heads. At this moment, the ice wall behind Dora was almost shattered by the aftermath. "The town is gone." Grey and Lion looked at the direction where the town was originally located in front of the wall, and their eyes widened. Under the aftermath of the Evan meteor, half of the town was directly blasted to the ground. Job completed. In the air, when Evan checked his character status and got a 10-year job medal, he knew that Deliura had been completely wiped out by him. Evan hesitated after receiving the 10-year job medal, and finally decided to keep the medal. After all, the 10-year job medal can upgrade all abilities below the 10th level. Evan's level 9 skills have been upgraded to level 10. Right now, Evan doesn't have the ability to level 9, so he doesn't plan to use up his medals. Instead, wait until he completes the SS level job in the future, upgrades one of his skills to level 9, and then uses the medal to upgrade to level 10, so as to maximize his benefits. Thinking of this, Evan withdrew from his character template, looked at the town below him, and then slowly drifted down. Along with the slowly rising sun, the sky revealed a pale light. All the residents who watched Evan and Deliura's battle in fear all opened their mouths. The battle between Evan and Deliura was finally over. As the sky gradually brightened, the townspeople in the town finally saw the appearance of their town clearly. At this time, they were still shocked. The disappearing streets, the burning mountains, and the frozen houses are a bit too exaggerated no matter how you look at them. Chapter 32, All Right. Ah! Another mountain has disappeared. It seems that a mountain has been wiped out just now. There are not many towns left, but there are still some left. Haha, that's not bad, we survived Deliura's attack. Thank you, Lord Mage. Countless townspeople stood on the road leading to other towns in the distance, looking at the burning mountains in the distance. They complained, chatted, and some prayed or thanked. At the same time, after confirming that Deliura was eliminated, Evan gently floated in front of Lion and Grey, and said calmly, "Job completed." A child. When Evan fell in front of everyone, Dora stared at Evan's too young face for a moment. At first, she thought that Evan would be an old man who had gone deep into the devil's way. Now it seems that he is about the same age as her apprentices Lion and Grey. "Brother Evan, you are too powerful." Lion looked at Evan excitedly. Evan's appearance seemed to open the door to a new world for him. So it turns out that a mage can be strong like this. Too strong. Grey also kept nodding his head. It was also the first time he had seen a mage of this level, and he was truly a real wreck. No. Evan shook his head modestly. Compared with Irene who can make the whole country trembled, he was nothing at all. Boom. It was also at the same time that Evan just announced that the job was completed. The impact of the meteor caused an avalanche to occur on the mountain peaks farther away, and accompanied by a howling sound, it flooded towards the town. No, it's an avalanche. Grey stared wide-eyed at the huge white waves accompanied by the whistling sound. To be honest, an avalanche of this level is a bit tricky. Dora looked at the huge white torrent, and a few drops of crystal clear sweat dripped from her forehead. It would be fine if it was her complete victory period, but the magic power she had just fought against Deliura was not enough. Stop an avalanche of this magnitude. If it's just to protect a few people. Dora thought that although the town could not be protected, she still had the confidence to protect the people present. No other solution anymore. Stand back. Looking at the coming avalanche, Evan turned around and let her and the others stand back. His eyes changed. The original human eyes suddenly became like some kind of reptile, and then his body began to swell continuously. At the same time, the originally bright sky was suddenly, without warning, covered with dark clouds. There was a gust of wind in the town, and there seemed to be lightning flashing in the sky. In just a few seconds, the color of the sky and the earth changed, the wind blew up, the clouds were dark, the lightning flashed and the thunder roared. Suddenly there is a god hiding behind the thick dark clouds, looking down on all living beings. Boom! Lightning flashes and thunder resounds. Woohoo! Accompanied by bursts of terrifying roars, the giant snow-white bear instinctively lay down on the ground as if sensing something, trembling in its mouth. Roar! At the same time, Evan also gradually completed his transformation. He suddenly let out a roar that was not human-like. The next second, his body turned blue and flew into the sky, his figure hidden in the dark clouds. What happened to Brother Evan just now? Lion and Grey glanced at each other. They were all shocked by Evan's sudden change. Could it be some kind of transformation magic? But what kind of transformation magic to create such an exaggerated scene? Dur couldn't understand. Although she has traveled all over the world and has some experience, she has never seen such exaggerated magic. Just when Dur, Grey, and Lion were wondering, the dark clouds in the sky suddenly rolled over. Boom! The lightning flashed, and there seemed to be a pair of scarlet eyes looming in the dark clouds. Ah! A monster is inside. Grey's keen senses captured the fleeting scene in the sky, and he felt fear. Even if there is something in the dark clouds, it will only be Brother Evan, right? How could there be monsters? After hearing Grey's words, Lion smiled. He watched Evan fly into the sky. With Evan's strength, how could there be monsters in the dark clouds in the sky? There really are monsters. Grey retorted that he really saw a huge monster. Impossible. Lion shook his head, he didn't believe it at all, he thought it must be Grey's eyesight. Boom! Just as the two were arguing, a huge, majestic head suddenly emerged from the dense dark clouds. The head was as big as a room, with two horns and eyes like a millstone. There really are monsters. Lion stared at the huge head and his eyes widened. Look, I didn't lie to you, did I? Seeing Lion's surprised look, Grey immediately felt a little less fear in his heart, and instead became a little prouder. No, it's not a monster. That's... Dur looked at the monster in the sky with its huge head protruding and rolling in the clouds, and felt startled. For that kind of creature, there is a description. Its horns are like a deer, its head is like a camel, its eyes are like a rabbit, its neck is like a snake, its belly is like a house, its scales are like a fish, its claws are like an eagle, its palms are like a tiger, and its ears are like a cow. Its name is... Dragon. That's a dragon. Couldn't it be that Brother Evan changed? The eyes of Grey and Lion were full of disbelief. Hot breath. At the moment when Grey and the others were shocked, the giant dragon opened its bloody mouth, and a terrifying heat shot out directly from the dragon's mouth. In an instant, the huge heat wave collided with the violent avalanche of nature, and the endless ice and snow turned into white steam and rose up. When blizzard collided with the heat of the dragon, the winner was heat. The terrifying heat directly burned through the seemingly endless blizzard. The aftermath of the heat breath turned into a heat wave and burned up all the snowflakes that hadn't approached. In the blink of an eye, the avalanche disappeared without a trace, but this is not over yet. Evan's full energy did not stop, but directly rushed towards the snow-capped mountains several kilometers away. Boom! Accompanied by the terrifying roar, the snow-capped mountain disappeared instantly in just the blink of an eye, but even so, Evan's heat still had no intention of stopping, and the heat wave kept roaring forward. 1, 2, 3. The endless flames burned more than a dozen high mountains. Until this moment, Evan's heat didn't stop. Hey! Watching the snow on the nearby snow mountains all melt into water vapor. Evan barely closed his mouth, and then his body slowly changed into a human shape, falling from the air. Very good, the avalanche has been resolved. Evan folded his arms, expressing his satisfaction with his masterpiece. Maybe Evan didn't realize that his mind had entered the fairy tale mode unconsciously. Although I really want to thank you, but no matter how you look at it, it's too much, right? Grey and Lion stared wide-eyed at the almost completely destroyed town, the disappearing mountains, and the huge mountain peaks that were still burning and spouting lava in the distance, turning from snow mountains to volcanoes. Hasn't Deliura already solved it? The avalanche has also been melted by me, and everyone can live in safety. Evan turned around and forgot to take a look, and the ruins in front of her sighed helplessly. It turns out that such a small gen was wiped out by Deliura unknowingly. Oh, I really can't help you. Then I will help you one last time. No, no, that was eliminated by you. Grey and Lion complained inwardly. But they didn't dare to say it outright. It's not that they were cowardly, it's just that Evan's strength left a deep impression on them, and they probably won't forget it in this lifetime. After Evan finished speaking, he ignored Grey, Lion, and others, and started his own actions. They saw dark and strange lines suddenly growing on Evan's body, and then endless gravity waves were released towards the sky, and the ruins of the entire town roared in the next second. These roaring ruins, under Evan's powerful control, shone with black light, slowly separated from the ground and flew towards the sky. This is not as simple as 1 block or 2 blocks. Evan's gravity wave covered the entire town. He's cleaning up the ruins of an entire town. However, this was not over yet. Even those mountain peaks destroyed by Evan, those broken gravels also flew into the sky under Evan's control. After a few minutes, a huge stone ball made of ruins covering the sky of the entire town was completed. Are you kidding me? Gray and Lion looked at the huge stone ball in the sky. They were so afraid that they had already forgotten how to speak. At this moment, they only had one thought in their hearts. Is this the power of a god? All right. Of course, these have nothing to do with Evan. He only has his own affairs in his eyes now. He manipulated the ruins one by one, and built several high mountains around the town like building blocks. Okay, is the mountain returned to you? Half an hour later, after finishing all this, Evan wiped the sweat from his forehead, turned around and spoke softly to Gray and Lion. However, when Evan turned around, what he saw was Gray and Lion who had collapsed on the ground. They didn't know why they collapsed to the ground. Anyway, their legs softened, and by the time they realized it, they were already sitting up on the ground. X774, at the beginning of September, Fairy Tales Mage Evan completed the 10-year job and successfully defeated the great demon Deliera created by the Black Mage Ziref. There are more than a dozen people who disappeared together with Deliera, and also alpine mountains that have stood over nearby towns for centuries. Regarding this, the Magic Council said. Chapter 33, Makarov arrives. What happened to you guys? Evan looked at Gray and Lion who were collapsed on the ground in puzzlement. We don't know either. But having said that, those mountains are like a garbage dump. It's too ugly. Gray and Lion complained to Evan. What? It's just nice to have a mountain. Do you still expect me to make it look better? Evan frowned. He wasn't good at games like building blocks, and he wasn't even good at games like Tetris, so it was normal for the mountain to be ugly. This is actually... After hearing what Evan said, Gray and Lion didn't dare to refute at all. They were completely overwhelmed by Evan's strength. Your name is Gray, right? As Evan said, he looked at Gray with black shattered hair. Yes. Yes. Gray immediately stood up straight, like a primary school student being scolded. Hey! Do you know how much trouble you caused your family to challenge Deliera by yourself? Evan looked at Gray seriously. In fact, if he wasn't there this time, Dur would be in danger. In the original book, Dur's death was largely responsible for Gray. I can no longer cause trouble to my family. Because my family members are all dead, they were killed by Deliera. Gray's complexion was a bit ugly, his brows were tightly furrowed, there was an indescribable sadness in his eyes, and his small fists were firmly clenched. Gray, look behind you. Your family has been worrying about you. Evan floated in front of Gray, and then manually adjusted the direction for Gray, making Gray look at Ur and Lion who were seriously injured behind them. Ur, Lion. Sorry. Gray looked at Ur and Lion for a moment, and then Gray seemed to understand something, and he threw himself into Ur's arms. Yes, his family was indeed killed by Deliera, but there are still people who care about him in the world, and those people are also his family. It's good that you two are fine. Seeing Gray, who knew his mistake, Ur warmed up in her heart, and hugged Lion and Gray into her arms, showing warmth on her face. If you know your mistakes, just correct them. When you take risks in the future, think about your family. Remember, you are not alone, there are still a group of people who are worried about your safety. Evan looked at Gray who kept sobbing, and educated him. Yeah, I see, Mr. Evangelist. Gray turned around, and Gray, who had already learned Evan's name from Lion, nodded towards Evan. You bastard, you also know that your family members are worried about your safety. Since that's the case, don't you want to apologize to your family? Just as Evan was educating Gray, a thunderous sound sounded, a towering mountain peak slowly moved towards Evan, Gray, Lion, and Ur. The mountain peak has become a spirit. Gray and Lion's eyes widened again. They felt that what they saw in just one day today was more than the 8 or 9 years since they were born. At the same time, the mountain moved, and he jumped lightly and landed directly on top of the crowd. I'm going to die. Help! The Alpine Goblin killed someone. Gray and Lion looked at the dark sky, their tears ran wildly, hugged each other, and shouted loudly. No, that's not a mountain, it's... Evan looked at the huge mountain. Since he traveled alone to complete the job, for the first time, he showed a surprised look. Yo, hello everyone. I am Makarov, the guild master of Fairy Tale. While Evan was talking, the mountain peak became smaller and smaller above everyone's heads, and finally turned into a little old man who was shorter than the children and dressed in a funny clown costume. He looked at Grey and the others amiably, smiling and saying hello. The mountain spirit becomes a little old man in a circus. Grey and Lion shouted in surprise as they watched Makarov transform into a little old man. Guildmaster, why did you come to the northeast? Evan looked at Makarov and greeted him cordially. Bastard brat, who do you think I am here because of? Makarov looked at Evan and roared angrily. This guy, Evan, obviously talks about others in the same way. Why is he completely unaware? Really, who did this kid learn from? Makarov felt helpless towards Evan. Could it be because of? Evan was shocked when he saw Makarov. Ah! Yes, that's it. Makarov heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Evan's appearance. It seemed that Evan was still a little self-conscious. You didn't come to the northeast because of guild arts, did you? Evan touched his chin, thought for a while, and then replied. Ah, yes, it's because of guild arts. Makarov kept nodding his head, and then he suddenly noticed something was wrong. Ah! Makarov raised his brows, and then roared angrily, guild arts. I'm because of you. Because of you. You actually went to carry out the 10-year job without saying a word? What do you think? It's not good, my heart is already hurting. Makarov clutched his heart. He felt that if he continued like this, he would not be able to last for a few years. Don't worry. Guildmaster. You will live a long life. Evan gave Makarov a thumbs up, predicting Makarov's own lifespan in advance. Should I thank you? With you brat, I won't live long. Speaking of which, what happened to guild arts you just mentioned? Makarov suddenly remembered something, narrowed his eyes slightly, and at the same time had a bad premonition in his heart. Guildmaster, you don't know. Evan was taken aback for a moment, then scratched the back of his head lightly, muttering in his mouth. What should I know? Bastard brat. Don't be tricky, just talk about it. Makarov urged Evan. Actually, guild arts is also in the north, and I met him a few days ago. I heard him clamoring for revenge for some woman. Evan turned her head and answered Makarov's question. Nothing happened when the two met, right? The corners of Makarov's eyes twitched slightly, and then he asked guiltily. The two of us fought. Evan thought calmly, and answered the question in Makarov's heart. As expected, and then. Makarov felt that his head was getting bigger, and he knew that it would be bad for Evan to meet guild arts. We didn't do anything, we just blew up a mountain. Then we fell asleep because of too much magic consumption. By the time I woke up, guild arts was gone. So now I don't know where he is, but look at that posture, I advise you to be mentally prepared. Evan answered Makarov's question truthfully. What do you mean just blowing up a mountain? Do you know how many words I have to write to check if you tear down a mountain? Makarov felt like he was about to cry. Speaking of which, the surrounding mountains are really strange. As Makarov said, he raised his head and looked at the nearby mountains with different shapes. He raised his brows and thought to himself that he should go out more often. The world is so big that there are so many wonders. Guess why those mountains became like this? Grey and Lion complained frantically in their hearts. It's just that because Evan, who is like a monster, is here, they dare not speak out. Chapter 34, Inviting Ur. Are you Lord Makarov, one of the 10 wizard saints? Ur sized Makarov up and down, until she saw the clown suit Makarov was wearing, and the shining silver medal representing the status of the 10 great sorcerers hanging on his chest. Makarov's identity. Ur has also heard about Makarov, one of the 10 wizard saints. Hello. Makarov looked Ur up and down, and then showed a kind smile. What good seedlings! What if all 3 of them can be drawn into the guild? Makarov's eyes kept turning back and forth on Ur, Grey, and Lion, and he kept thinking in his heart. Ur, is this grandpa famous? Grey and Lion looked at Ur's respectful expression and asked curiously. Yes. This grandfather is a very powerful mage. Ur nodded, gently stroked the heads of Lion and Grey, and replied. A strong mage? Is it stronger than Ur? Lion was taken aback for a moment, and asked suspiciously. Although Deliura was finally solved by Evan, in Lion's eyes, as long as Ur can use that trick, Ur can definitely solve Deliura. Unfortunately, Lion doesn't know the magic he secretly learned from Ur's study is ice magic, and what price does it take to successfully activate it. But this doesn't affect Lion's eyes that Ur is the strongest mage. This is a disciple's longing for the master, and children's longing for their parents. Senior Makarov is a mage countless times stronger than me. He is one of the 10 strongest mages in this continent, and he was selected as one of the 10 wizard saints by the Magic Council. Listening to Lion's question, Ur gently stroked Lion's head and smiled. A mage stronger than Ur. Grey and Lion looked at Makarov in shock. Hehe, the strength of the mages is not only based on the strength of the magic power, but also the belief. Your master Ur is a very good mage, no less than me. Makarov looked at Grey and Lion with a smile. Makarov had already looked down on false names such as strength and weakness. This kind of heart is worthy of being the 10 wizard saints. Ur looked at Makarov, who looked like a kind old man, thinking inwardly. This continent is too big, and there are countless mages stronger than her, but the town where Lion and Grey are located is too small, and the sky they can see is very narrow. If they continue to stay here, it may affect the growth of Lion and Grey, maybe. After thinking for a while, Ur made a decision in her heart. She looked at Makarov and asked, Senior Makarov, can you take these 2 children away? They are both excellent children. If they stay here, it will only delay their growth. Go to a stronger place, go to the west, where there is a right place for them. Is it okay? After hearing Ur's words, Makarov was slightly taken aback. Please. Ur leaned forward slightly, begging Makarov. In that case. Makarov nodded on the surface pretending to be serious, but his heart was already happy, and he had reaped 2 good seedlings. This is a great thing for Makarov. Don't leave Ur. Grey, who had just recognized his inner feelings and regarded Ur as his family, kept shaking his head, as if he didn't intend to leave Ur. Silly boy, didn't you always ask me why I don't continue to teach you new magic? In fact, I have no magic to teach you. The sky here is too small. You need a bigger sky, a wider stage. Follow Senior Makarov and leave, so that you can learn stronger magic and become a mage beyond me. Ur looked at the young Grey, his once wounded and frozen heart revealed some warmth. Lion was silent after hearing Ur's words. In fact, he followed Ur to learn magic earlier than Grey, and asked Ur why he didn't teach him new magic. Ur told him to find magic to learn by himself. Since you don't want to be separated, why don't we all go together? Go to Fairy Tale? Evan asked, looking at Ur and Grey, who looked like mother and child loving each other. I don't intend to continue fighting as a mage anymore. My reason for fighting is already. After hearing what Evan said, Ur gently stroked Grey's head in his arms with an extremely sad expression. There is still a reason to continue fighting, right? Whether it's Grey or Lion, they're the reason for you to continue fighting, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be that desperate to fight something dangerous like Deliura, right? Evan directly interrupted Ur, and he looked at Ur seriously, Grey in Ur's arms, and Lion who was thinking, and preached to the 3 of them. After listening to Evan's words, Ur trembled. She looked at Grey and Lion who had regarded her as her family, and recalled the little things between her and Grey Lion. She has already lost her own daughter, will she continue to lose them now? This question echoed in Ur's mind. In the end, Ur seemed to have made a decision. She hugged Grey tightly, and at the same time, tears flowed from her eyes. Yes. I have another reason to continue fighting. Ur's voice was trembling. She hugged Grey in her arms tightly, sobbing, looking at Grey in her arms and Lion beside her. What a twisted pair of master and apprentice. Evan looked at Ur who was looking squarely into his heart and sighed. Sure enough, Ur and Grey were really similar. Boy, you are very good at teaching. Makarov glanced at Ur who was looking squarely into his heart, pulled Evan aside, and whispered. What teaching? That's not teaching, I just simply understand Ur's feelings. Evan sighed. In fact, he was also working hard for the reasons he was fighting for, Irene, Urza, and Fairy Tale. In fact, Evan has always had a sense of urgency, because even if there is no accident, even if the Ziref Empire will not conflict with Fairy Tale in the future, he will still have to face the Black Dragon Acknowledge, whether he will join the guild in the future Natsu and the others, or Irene, are all targets to be hunted in the eyes of Acknowledge. Evan is not sure whether the butterfly effect from his appearance will make this his hunting ahead of time, so he needs to keep getting stronger until Evan becomes strong enough to have the power to protect everything he wants to protect. So have you decided? Now that you have found a reason to continue fighting, do you want to come to Fairy Tale? Evan came to her and asked. Well, I've decided. Now that I have found a reason to continue fighting. Even for the sake of the two of them, I will continue to cheer up. If this is the case, then as an incompetent mother and master should set a good example for the children. Join Fairy Tale together and work hard to become stronger. Dur smiled refreshingly as she spoke, and she seemed to have turned back into the free and powerful ice mage she once was. Molding magic is free magic. Once you block your heart, you will stop moving forward. And now Dur has successfully removed the chains on her body. Chapter 35, Dur and Altair. The sky is getting brighter. When the scorching sun appeared above everyone's heads, and the warm sunlight swayed on Evan, Makarov, Dur, and others, accompanied by a series of apprehensive vibrations, soldiers in armor, running towards the town. Evan, it's not good. Makarov looked at the banners held high in the hands of the soldiers, representing the medals of the Magic Council, and frowned. Is it the Magic Council? It looks like we're going to retreat. Evan also noticed the soldiers of the Magic Council, and frowned. In fact, during the days when he was advancing on the ice sheet, he was warned many times by the Magic Council. Although he explained to these people that the reason why he threw meteors to the edge of the town was to stop the tide of beasts, but these people did not understand the situation at all. When things come to this, the only way to do it is to use that. Makarov looked at Evan and blinked. So that's it, I understand. Evan nodded lightly, and then used the ability of the press fruit to lead everyone onto Dabai's back. Enchant haste. It's time to show your true speed. After Evan enchanted haste to the giant bear below him, he patted the giant bear's head lightly. Roar! The giant bear roared, accompanied by a sonic boom, and sprinted forward. We can only run away. On the back of the giant bear, Evan spread out the barrier to block the biting cold wind and air current, and spoke softly. As long as the soldiers of the Magic Council can't catch up, it means that Fairy Tale hasn't made any mistakes. In fact, Evan didn't realize that his behavior style became more and more like a fairy tale. Now I'm here to teach you the first principle of the Fairy Tale Guild. When you meet the bastards of the Magic Council, remember to run away immediately. As long as you don't get caught, it means that we have done nothing. As for if these bastards come to you later, everyone remembers that no one ever did anything. Makarov sat on the back of the giant bear, watching and the others speak softly. To put it simply, the fairy tale rule is, even if you do something, you can't admit it. Dur. Is the Magic Council a very bad organization? Gray was a little puzzled. He didn't know what the Magic Council was, so he asked his teacher, Dur. No. The Magic Council is an organization that restricts mages from abusing magic and protects civilians who don't know magic. Simply put, the Magic Council is an organization of justice. Dur explained what is the Magic Council. Then why are we running away? Gray looked at her suspiciously. Since the Magic Council is a just organization, they should have no reason to escape. This. Dur opened her mouth slightly, but to be honest, it was not very good for her to answer this question, so she had no choice but to look at Makarov. This question is very profound. Makarov's face turned red, and Makarov couldn't answer Gray's question. Of course, this doesn't mean that Makarov doesn't know the answer, it's that he can't say it at all. How could he want to tell a 7 or 8-year-old child? Yes, our fairy tale is the guild that abuses magic the most on the entire continent. The guild that destroys more towns than all the dark guilds on the entire continent combined. A guild that provides jobs for the construction teams of half the continent. I see. Gray was thoughtful. He seemed to understand something, but he didn't seem to understand anything. Hey! Makarov breathed a sigh of relief seeing that Gray didn't continue to press him, and then looked at Evan who was sitting on the head of the giant bear. Evan, what are your plans next? Makarov planned to ask Evan about his future plans. If Evan was planning for him to complete the 10-year job alone, he felt like he was going to have a heart attack. Next, I have no plans. Speaking of which, it will be the harvest season. Evan gently put away the job list in his hand, and watched Makarov speak casually. Yes, the harvest season is about to begin. Makarov showed an incomparably kind smile, then his face became soft and gloomy, and he looked at Evan and said in a cold voice, "So, what's the job you just read on your hand, kid?" "Nothing at all." Evan replied without changing his expression. "Stop lying. I've seen it all." After saying that, Makarov rushed to Evan, going to grab the job list. "Just kidding, you didn't see anything at all." Evan held the job list under his buttocks, and clasped Makarov with both hands. "The guild master is fighting with the members? What kind of guild is this?" Grey and Lion looked at Evan, who was fighting with their guild master, and complained. At the same time, they became curious about the fairy tale guild. In the end, Makarov snatched the job list from Evan's hand. "Evan, where did you get this job list?" Makarov looked at the job list in his hand and frowned. The job level on the job list was not high, but the job was a bit complicated. "I got it from the mages of other guilds. It happened that I was a little interested in this job, so I took it." Evan sat on top of the giant bear with a calm expression. As for Lion, and Grey, Makarov and Evan kept silent while watching charades. "This job is not easy." Makarov sighed. "Evan's job is to investigate the recent child kidnapping cases that have sprung up across the continent. Obviously, these child kidnappers are organized and disciplined. Organizations like this are almost hard to find. Because they will do it cleanly every time they do it, even if they catch some people, those people will bite their tongues and basically can't ask anything useful, so that the organization that abducts children from all over the continent still active on the mainland. It's really not easy to do." Evan nodded slightly, then she thought of something and looked at and asked, "Speaking of which, Senior how much do you know about brain?" "Brain?" Didn't expect that Evan would suddenly talk to her. She was taken aback for a moment, then thoughtfully, and answered Evan's question, "Is that the head of the Magic Development Bureau, Brain?" "Yes." Because Brain is the director of the Bureau of Magical Development on the surface, but he has been doing child trafficking all this time. "I heard that you seem to have been in contact with Brain. How much do you know about him?" Evan squinted his eyes, and he deliberately guided "Has that guy been doing this kind of thing? Could it be, my child was also killed by that guy?" Ur's expression turned cold. After hearing what Evan said, she thought of what Brain had said to her, and she was instantly ablaze with astonishing magic power. "It seems that you really know him?" Evan asked as he looked at who was bursting out with terrifying magic power. I used to pin my hopes on the Magic Development Bureau in order to save my child, but then Brain told me that it failed, and my child died. Now think about how stupid I am? What stupid things have I done? I actually pushed my child into the pit of fire with my own hands. I'm really a disqualified mother." Ur's expression was painful. When she thought of sending her child to the traffickers with her own hands, her heart ached and she was in great pain. She thought, her child must hate her very much. Hate her derelict mother. If that's the case, then Senior your child is most likely not dead. Evan felt that the reality was almost there, so he told that Altair was still alive in another form. "Yes, if it's human trafficking. Then she should still be alive." "Yes. She's very likely still alive. I'm going to find her." "Thank you, Evan, thank you for telling me this information." Took Evan's hand and kept thanking him. "No, because I happen to be investigating Brain and the situation of human trafficking. When the Deliura incident distracted the council, we can investigate the job of Brain and human trafficking together. Maybe you can find information about your daughter." Evan comforted "As for now, Senior you don't need to worry, I think the child who inherited a huge magical power from you should not meet too much danger." "That's a relief." Nodded, fighting spirit rekindled in her eyes. She must find her daughter back, it was her tears after all, her name was Altair. Chapter 36, The Chrono Noise Guild's Mages. At night. Except for the giant bear Dabai who was still galloping, whether it was Evan, Makarov, Grey or Lion, they all hugged Dabai's thick fur and fell asleep. For a moment, there was only Dabai whose eyes were shining with light. Under the blessing of Evan's enchantment magic, he happily released the endless spiritual power in his body. Dawn. When the warm rays of the sun caressed everyone's cheeks, Evan, Makarov and the others opened their eyes one after another. Then they saw countless mages holding weapons, nervously surrounding Dabai, seeming to be confronting Dabai faintly. The leading mage opened his mouth as if to say something. But because of the magic barrier attached to Evan, he couldn't hear what he said at all. What's going on? Grey and Lion looked at the mages who surrounded them, with panicked expressions. The visitor is not good. Dur could feel the deep malice of the group of mages around her. At the same time, she was on alert, ready to strike at any time, freezing the group of mages into ice. Evan, it couldn't be your bear, right? What did it do to these mages? If you do something bad, you should apologize to these guys. Makarov scratched his thinning hair. According to Makarov's experience over the years, when mages from other guilds block the door, it is likely that his own members have done something excessive. A little apology will usually calm the anger of those mages who come to find fault, of course. If the group of mages who find fault are not willing to let go, then Makarov will tell those bastards what the 10 wizard saints are. No, my bear is very well behaved and usually doesn't take the initiative to find fault. Anyway, listen to what these guys are saying. As Evan said, he revoked the enchantment he had put on Dabai's back. Suddenly, the howling cold wind blew across everyone's cheeks. Feeling the biting cold wind, Makarov shrank his neck subconsciously. Hey! What's going on with you guys? Don't you know that this is the site of our Chrono Noise Mage Guild? Could it be that you want to make an enemy of our guild? When Evan cancelled the surrounding barriers, he finally heard the words of these mages who kept shouting. Chrono Noise! Evan frowned when he heard what the group of mages said. Hehe, now that you know you're afraid, take your bear and get out of here. The leading mage looked at Evan and smiled triumphantly. Just when the mage thought that the name of his guild had frightened Evan and was complacent, he saw Evan showing an extremely bewildered expression. I've never heard of it. This. Evan's words made this group of mages from the Chrono Noise Guild almost fall down on the ice. Guildmaster, have you ever heard of this Chrono Noise Guild? Evan looked to Makarov who was beside her and asked for advice. I can't remember. Is it a very powerful guild? There are too many guilds on this continent, even I can't remember the names of all the guilds. Makarov turned his brain, finally gave up thinking, and looked at Ur. Makarov looked at Ur and asked, Ur, you should be the mage here, right? Have you ever heard of this guild named Chrono Noise? Lord Makarov, although I really want to answer you, but in fact, I have never heard of such this guild. After thinking about it, Ur finally sighed helplessly. It's been a long time since she left the magic world. Ur, you don't have to be so polite, since you have decided to join our fairy tale. From now on, we are family members, what lord? Your Majesty. Your Highness. There is no need for the honorific title. Makarov smiled and looked at Ur. He was really optimistic about Ur, because Ur is the kind of steady talent that their fairy tale guild is scarce. I just got selected by the Magic Council, and I'm just one of the 10 wizard saints. The last sentence is very loud. 10 wizard saints. One of the 10 strongest mages in the Ishgar continent selected by the Magic Council. The mages who surrounded Evan and the others by the Chrono Noise turned pale with shock after hearing Makarov's words. As long as they are in the magical world of Ishgar, there is no one who does not know the 10 wizard saints. The sign of a great mage. That was a group of people standing at the pinnacle of Ishgar's magic world. No, rather than being human, it would be better to say that each and every one of that group of people was a monster in human skin. Brother Jason, could it be, the Magic Council found out about that and specially sent the 10 wizard saints to destroy us, right? Some mages who had a weak defense in their hearts blew themselves up on the spot. He looked at the leading mage and asked extremely nervously. Stupid. Don't tell the truth yourself. Besides, he said he is the 10 wizard saints. How could he be the 10 wizard saints? If he is the 10 wizard saints, then I am the head of the Magic Council. After hearing what his younger brother said, the leading mage turned pale with shock and said angrily. You are right. After listening to the words of the leading mage, the younger brothers looked relaxed and gradually calmed down. Oh. At the same time, Makarov, who had been listening to the conversations of the people, immediately grasped the key points in the conversations of these mages, and was afraid of the Magic Council, that is to say, these mages were doing some shameful things, correct? If that's the case. With a light leap, Makarov leaped from the head of the giant bear to the front of those mages. The moment he landed, the circus clown costume on his body turned into a white gold trimmed piece with a print on the back of the coat with the logo of the 10 wizard saints mages. Hey! Brats, Please tell me what you said just now and what you don't want the Magic Council to know. Makarov looked at the Chrono Noise Guild members in front of him with a smile, and asked with a smile. Stupid old man! Do you think we will tell you the matter? If you don't want to die, get out of here and don't hinder our guild from doing things. The boisterous Chrono Noise named Jason, the boss of the mages, spoke insultingly to Makarov. That's it. That's it. The rest of the younger brothers stood behind Jason and kept echoing. So that's it, you don't want to say more. If that's the case, then I'll ask again. Little devils! I'll give you a chance to tell what you know now, otherwise. The moment Makarov's words fell, his body became extremely huge, like a mountain, his face was gloomy, his eyes shone with golden light, and the terrifying golden magic power scattered into the air following Makarov's words. The air becomes extremely viscous, contorting. Chapter 37, Fairy Tale Style. I don't think you guys want to know what this else is. Then now, brats, let's start choosing. Makarov was condescending, as if he was looking at a group of ants, and he spoke in a cold voice to the group of mages called the Chrono Noise. Monster! Humans have turned into monsters. Brother Jason, this guy is indeed a genuine wizard saint. The clamoring mages of the Chrono Noise looked at the sky-penetrating giant in front of them, threw away the weapons in their hands, then knelt down in unison, kowtowed to Makarov, and shouted, "We answer truthfully, please let us go." 5 minutes later. So, your guild picked up a devil's egg? After seeing the power of the demon Deliura created by Zeref, you plan to hatch this demon egg and domesticate it into the combat power of your guild, so that your guild can become the strongest guild in Ishgar, is that it? With his hands behind his back, Makarov asked indifferently to the group of mages in front of him who had chosen to surrender but were still bruised and swollen. That's it, that's it. At this moment, Jason, the majestic cotter of the Mages Guild's Chrono Noise 5 minutes ago, has completely lost his arrogant demeanor just now. He was kneeling in front of Makarov with a bruised nose and a swollen face, answered everything to Makarov truthfully. Because when Makarov hit him just now, he hit him the hardest. Idiot! The strength of the guild will not become stronger just because of the joining of a demon. The reason why the guild is strong is because of the bond between the guild members. You bunch of ignorant brats! If the demon gets out of control, do you know how much disaster it will bring to this world? You bastard! After Makarov heard Jason's words, the anger in his heart continued to burn. While speaking, he punched the Chrono Noise Guild leader named Jason on the head. It hurts. Jason felt the pain in his head, tears slowly flowed from his eyes, and saw a swollen cell emanating from his head at a speed visible to the naked eye. Guildmaster, since we have heard such a thing, we can't ignore it. Evan flew to Makarov's side, and whispered to Makarov. It is true that this idiot guild cannot be left alone. If this group of ignorant brats are allowed to mess around, it might bring some kind of disaster to this continent. Makarov looked helpless. Little devils, now I will give you a chance to make amends. Take us to your guild immediately. We must deal with your devil's eggs. Makarov ordered to the group of mages in front of him. Yes sir. At this moment, the group of mages who had been completely tamed by Makarov didn't dare to say a no to Makarov. With the guidance of this group of Chrono Noise mages, everyone soon arrived not far from the Chrono Noise Guild. It was a huge building that looked like an alchemy workshop. My lords, we have arrived at our guild. The building in front of you is the guild of our Chrono Noise. The mage named Jason stood in front of Evan and the others, bending over, looking flattering. Guildmaster, looking at other people's guilds, in terms of appearance, they are all more impressive than our guild. Evan looked at the huge building of the Chrono Noise, and whispered to Makarov. What do you know? Our guild might be in retro style, but that house it has a history of hundreds of years. Don't underestimate our old house. After hearing what Evan said, Makarov blushed. He looked serious and began to flicker. It's not a matter of insufficient funds. Do you think I don't want to expand or renovate? If it weren't for all of you who don't let me worry so much, I would have already saved enough money to renovate the guild. Bastard! As Makarov was talking, he gritted his teeth, and tears kept streaming from his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something that made him very sad. In short, the devil's egg is inside, right? Evan ignored Makarov, who was secretly sad. He stretched his muscles and looked at the Chrono Noise Guild in the distance, his eyes slightly fixed. At this moment, inside the Chrono Noise of the Mages Guild. In front of a huge and pitch-black object that looks like a round ball, there is a little girl with her eyes closed and her hands clasped together. She looks about 8 or 9 years old. At this moment, the black ball is being pushed by the little girl, constantly squirming. Listening carefully, you can vaguely hear the sound of thump, plop. Heart beating from inside the spherical object. Yes, the thing that looks like a black ball in front of them is the devil's egg accidentally picked up by the chrono noise. Nano, you have to work hard. Think about your parents. As long as you can hatch the contents, you can reunite with your family. Behind the girl, there is a stilt-footed, short stature, with one black eye and one white eye, who looks like some kind of strange Dharma mage. At this moment, he was looking at the girl with a wretched face, constantly encouraging the girl to use her own magic, just because this little girl named Nano had awakened a magic that could accelerate the growth of the devil's egg. While obtaining the devil's egg, he also found a little girl with the ability to accelerate the growth of the devil's corruption. In the eyes of this mage who looks like Bodhidharma, it is simply an arrangement from heaven. In the dark, everything is directed by fate. The girl is in great pain. On the one hand, she is anxious to see her parents, and on the other hand, she rejects the devil's egg. She instinctively feels that this thing in front of her must not be hatched. Once she successfully hatches it, it will bring endless threats to the surrounding towns. Boom! Just when the girl was crying in pain, accompanied by a roar, the entire Chrono Noise Guild shook tremendously. Hey! Earthquake! The mage who looked like Bodhidharma frowned. He kept observing the surroundings with his black and white eyes. Boom! Just as this wretched-looking mage looked puzzled, the ceiling of the Chrono Noise Guild was violently lifted by a mysterious force. The girl, the devil's egg, and this mage who looked like Bodhidharma were directly exposed to the light of the sun. Found it! At the same time, a soft voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. Who? This mage who looked like Bodhidharma raised his head the moment he heard the movement, and then he was stunned by the sudden sunlight and couldn't open his eyes. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and vaguely, he seemed to see a young man who didn't look tall but had a handsome face, standing in the sky. And the person who was said to be alive just now is this child who can stand in the sky out of thin air. In addition to the devil's egg, other targets have also been discovered. Evan looked at the devil's egg in the room, the petite girl, and spoke softly to the wretched-looking mages behind her. Every time I see Brother Evan making a move, I always feel extremely exaggerated. Gray and Lion looked at each other, cold sweat dripping down their foreheads. They still remembered that they were still discussing how to find the devil's egg in the huge building in front of them. The next second, Evan gave a solution, which was just demolish the building in front of them. This is the style of fairy tale. Chapter 38, The Chrono Noise is all over. Boom! Makarov outside the building, after hearing what Evan said, directly blasted the wall of the guild in front of him with a punch, and led her and the others directly towards the room where the devil's egg was placed. Who are you guys? In the room, the mage who looked like Bodhidharma, looking at the guilds that destroyed him one after another, asked Makarov and others nervously as they swaggered in. Don't you know that this is the site of our Chrono Noise? Or are you planning to be destroyed by the great Mr. Nesbooms, who is the guild master of the Chrono Noise Guild? This man who looks like some kind of Bodhidharma is none other than Nesbooms, the guild master of the Chrono Noise of the Mages Guild. Good girl, you'll be fine now. Before Nesbooms, who had enough prestige in several nearby towns, said, a beautiful figure had already arrived at the little girl whose eyes were streaming tears, and picked her up. Gently stroking the girl's back, constantly comforting the girl. You are. The girl stopped crying when she heard the voice, and looked at the beautiful woman with short black hair who was holding her in her arms. Her eyes were full of curiosity. We are the ones who came to save you, and we will take you back to meet your mommy and daddy right away. That beautiful woman with short black hair is Ur. At this moment, she is holding the girl in her arms, her eyes are full of maternal love. The little girl in front of her reminded Ur of her own child. Bastard! Didn't you hear the Lord's words? Nesbooms looked at Ur, who ignored her, and felt that he had been humiliated, and immediately formed a magic circle with his hands. He planned to teach the woman in front of him a good lesson. Shut up! You scum who snatches other people's children! Ur didn't talk nonsense, she raised her hand in ice make. Boom! In an instant, the arrogant Nesbooms was frozen in place by Ur along with the magic he released. The gap in strength between the two made Nesbooms even incapable of resisting. What happened? The guildmaster was killed. Go, destroy this group of intruders. At the same time, with the successive movements, the mages of the chrono noise were finally alarmed. Around Evan and the others, the mages of the chrono noise swarmed in from all directions. Ice Make Rose Garden. Dora looked at the dozens of mages surrounded by everyone, with a calm expression, and put her hands in the posture of Ice Make Magic. In the next moment, she directly froze all the members in sight. Giant Fist. As for the mages that were missed, all the fists enlarged by Makarov were sent flying. Ice Make Gun. Ice Make Swallow. At the same time, Grey and Lion were also manipulating their ice figures, constantly attacking the group of mages. After a few minutes. Hey! Looking at the ruins in front of her, Dur slowly exhaled a breath of foul air. The things that were suppressed in her heart finally dissipated a lot as she vented. This kid Dur, like the other brats, is he also a master at tearing down houses? Makarov looked at the collapsed buildings destroyed by Ur's molding magic, and fell into deep thought. He always felt that Ur was also demolished. You guys! Don't be too arrogant. Don't think that this way we can eliminate our chrono noise. We have a devil's egg. Wait until the devil comes out, and you will all be wiped out. Have you heard of Deliura? It's the Deliura who wiped out dozens of towns. Demon is not something that mere human beings can fight against. Just as everyone wiped out the chrono noise in an instant, a mage who was beaten by Makarov with a punch and lying on the ground with the chrono noise sneered at Evan and the others, saying cruel words. Devil Slayer. After hearing the mage's words, Evan came to the devil's egg with a cold expression, and then there was a move to slay devil, gravity wave. Boom! Following Evan's magic, the devil's egg exploded instantly, turning into countless pieces. What? The mage, who spoke harshly before, saw the scene of Evan destroying the devil's egg with a wave of his hand. His eyes widened, and he was speechless for a long time. Hey? What did you just say? After Evan destroyed the devil's egg, he looked at the mage who spoke rudely. After hearing Evan's question, the mage swallowed and opened his mouth slightly. I. However, this mage couldn't say a single word except for I. Who? By the way, the Deliura you mentioned earlier was the one who was attacked by Brother Evan. Grey and Lion looked at the mage who couldn't say a word, exchanged glances, and then walked up to the mage, laughing and speaking. What? Hearing the words, the mage trembled in fright. At this moment, he has lost the ability to speak. Grey, Lion, stop talking nonsense with these people. It's time for us to go. Evan looked at Grey and Lion who were still standing in the ruins of the Chrono Noise Guild, and shouted. All right Brother Evan, here we come. After hearing the words, Grey and Lion immediately ran towards Evan. The next step is to send the child to a nearby town to reunite with his parents. At the same time, let the idiots of the Magic Council send these idiots to prison. Evan looked at the wreckage all over the floor, and the Chrono Noise mages frozen into ice sculptures, and spoke to everyone. Yet. Makarov nodded slightly. Next, Evan and the group successfully arrived at a nearby town and sent the little girl Nano back home. Seeing the girl reunited with her family, everyone smiled knowingly, and then left silently. There seems to be a train nearby. Why don't we make trains directly? After Evan found out that there was a train in the town he was in, he asked everyone if they wanted to change their mode of transportation. Although Dabai's speed was very fast, it was not suitable for driving on the road after all. In order not to scare other people, he could only take the mountain road and kept climbing over the mountain. In fact, if you think about it this way, it is not as convenient as the train. Okay. Makarov and the others nodded slightly, agreeing to Evan's proposal. After half an hour, accompanied by the roar of the train, Evan and the others took the train towards the west. Outside the train station, countless passengers watched in horror at a huge 5-meter-tall white bear, standing upright like a human being, waving its wide bare paw, saying goodbye to Evan and the others. If you look carefully, you can see the tears from the corners of the white bear's eyes. Chapter 39, Torch Endeavor. On the train, Evan, Makarov, and the others sat on the large sofa. Although the 2 rows of sofas facing each other can only seat 4 people, because of Makarov and others, there are 4 children here, so it is very spacious despite it. Note, the 4 children refer to Evan, Grey, Lion, and Makarov. Is this the train? Grey, look at the changing scenery. Why didn't I think that Snow White Mountain was so beautiful before? Lion and Grey were leaning against the window, constantly looking out, admiring the beautiful snow scenery outside. Although they grew up in the north, they were already used to seeing the snow-white color, but seeing it from the high-speed train, it was different from seeing it on weekdays. The scenery is completely different. These two children. Dora looked at Grey and Lion, who were sitting opposite her, lying on the edge of the windowsill, looking out constantly. Her eyes were full of doting, as if they were looking at their own children generally. When Noor saw how excited Grey and Lion were at the moment, she also felt in her heart that her decision to leave the town with her two children and go to the west where magic is more active was absolutely the right choice. Only after getting out of this small world where I was, and coming to a bigger stage, can they see how vast this world is. It's really good. Makarov looked at Noor, Lion, and Grey with a smile. His heart was full of joy. He also gained a lot from this trip. He immediately gained a top combat power and 2 good seedlings. Sure enough, Evan can bring good luck to their fairy tale. Ah! Evan yawned self-consciously. As the train continued to move westward, Evan faintly felt the magic power of a certain idiot in his keen and powerful perception. Is that guy around here? Evan used observation haki, and muttered to herself. Well, may I ask that you are Mr. Makarov, right? Just as Evan and the others sat lazily on the train, enjoying the rare moment of rest. Accompanied by a slightly hoarse voice with some vicissitudes, a middle-aged man in a black coat, holding a dilapidated briefcase in his hand, who looked like he was in his 60s or 70s, walked to them with kindness. Next to Evan and the others, he took off his hat and saluted Makarov. You are Mr. Torch Endeavor. Please sit down quickly. After Makarov heard the voice, he turned his head slightly. When he saw the appearance of this middle-aged man, a look of surprise flashed across his face, and he immediately got off his seat, and asked the middle-aged man to take his seat. As for Makarov, who left his seat, he ran up to Evan who was sitting opposite him, and said softly, Evan, make room for me. Ugh! Evan sighed, and squeezed in the direction of Or next to her, leaving some space for Makarov. However, because of Or's slender figure, and the fact that Evan and Makarov are not very big, sitting in a row with 3 of them does not look very crowded. Hee. Then I'd rather be obedient than respectful. The middle-aged man named Torch Endeavor smiled at everyone, and sat opposite Makarov, where Makarov was originally sitting. Grey and Lion, who were originally sitting on the same side as Makarov, also sat down obediently after seeing a stranger taking their seats, carefully looking at the man named Torch Endeavor next to them. Hee, it's not as reserved as this one. Torch Endeavor just smiled lightly at Grey and Lion, then turned around and set his eyes on Evan. He said, surely this is Evan, who is famous in the mainland and has the title of Polar Star. He is indeed a good-looking talent. I heard that you like to hit people with meteors summoned by real heavenly body magic. I don't know if it is true or not. Like to hit people with meteors. We testify. Grey and Lion looked at each other, then kept nodding their heads while shouting inwardly. It's all just rumors. I've always been a peace-loving person, and I rarely use that level of magic. After listening to Torch Endeavor's words, Evan shook his head with a light smile, and at the same time glared at him. After hearing Torch Endeavor's question, he lowered his head as if to imply something to Grey and Lion who is holding their head high. In an instant, Grey and Lion calmed down like a mouse seeing a cat. Haha, Mr. Makarov, the kids in your guild are really interesting. Torch Endeavor looked at Evan, who exuded a faint murderous look, and Grey and Lion, who turned their heads to look at the window. Their bodies were constantly shaking and sweating profusely, and smiled awkwardly. As long as you like it. Makarov looked at Torch Endeavor and smiled cautiously. In short, I still hope that your guild can act a little lighter. After all, sometimes, what your guild does is difficult even for us. Torch Endeavor said, from his seat standing up, he smiled and nodded at everyone, then I wish you all a pleasant journey, and I'm getting off the train too. You go slowly. Makarov nodded slightly to Torch Endeavor, and watched him go to other compartments, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Grandpa Guildmaster, was that man just now a very strong mage? Could it be that, is he also one of the 10 wizard saints? Not long after Torch Endeavor left, Lion and Grey pulled Makarov and kept asking. How should I say it? Makarov looked a little hesitant, as if he couldn't make up his mind about how to describe Torch Endeavor. It's not about being strong or not. In terms of strength, that old gentleman probably isn't an opponent of any of us here, right? But in terms of power and fame, it's very troublesome. Torch Endeavor, one of the members of the Magic Council, is also the warden of the Mage Prison. Probably one of the people our guild master don't want to meet. Just as Makarov was hesitating, Evan explained the situation. Member of the Magic Council. Gray's eyes widened. He didn't expect the kind man just now to be a member of the Magic Council. Along the way, Gray and Lion listened to Makarov complaining about how vicious and inhumane the members of the Magic Council were, but now it seems the other party seems to be just an ordinary person, not as scary as Makarov said. The warden of the Mage Prison. Lion was also shocked by the identity of Torch Endeavor. Whether it was the identity of the other party's prison warden or the identity of a member of the Magic Council, they were all existences that could shock the magic world, and the two identities came together. One can imagine the rights and status of the other party. But what Lion noticed more was that this person with such power was dressed so plainly, and the briefcase in his hand also looked like it had been used for a long time. As you can see, it's a troublesome place. Fortunately, Mr. Endeavor is a neutral faction, otherwise, there will be a battle between the prison and us. Fairy tale. Makarov kept rubbing his hands back and forth, looking hesitant. Just as Lion and Grey said, the other party was not only a member of the Magic Council, but also the warden of the Mage Prison. Although he insisted, the other party didn't dare to do anything to him, one of the 10 wizard saints, but Makarov still had to give the face that should be given. Grandpa Guild Master, aren't we from the Fairy Tale Guild? Grey and Lion were shocked after hearing Makarov's words. Even they could understand that the Magic Council and the Mage Prison are organizations that specifically target criminals. In short, there are many reasons. Makarov didn't try to explain. He thought that after Grey and the others arrived at Fairy Tale, they would probably be able to understand what kind of magic guild Fairy Tale is, and understand the many reasons he said. Boom! Just as Makarov and the others were chatting, the train suddenly trembled with a roar. Ice Make immediately, Dur activated the molding magic, freezing the entire railway coach, thus fixing the carriage where they are in place. What happened? Makarov frowned and looked around suspiciously. Grey and Lion also became alert. Only Evan calmly used his observation haki, watching a group of uninvited guests from the Dark Magic Guild come to seek revenge on Torch Endeavor, and then kidnap the other party, speaking very calmly. Probably the enemy of that politician came to seek revenge. Chapter 40, Mage Prison Black Vox. Now, I'm in big trouble. Hearing this, Makarov's expression flickered. There was a trace of panic. A member of the Magic Council is in danger, of course it's a big deal. No, isn't this an opportunity? Evan shook his head after hearing Makarov's words. If Councillor Torch Endeavor can be pulled from the neutral faction to our side, I think our situation in the Magic Council will be much better in the future. Evan was meticulous in his thoughts. In fact, he had already observed the mages of the Dark Guild who were attacking the train. When the other party came to the nearby mountain in that strange vehicle, he had already noticed that the other party. Well, even the opponent's magic power and number of people are clear, but he doesn't care about it. That makes sense. Makarov, who was originally extremely anxious, lit up after hearing what Evan said. Wait, no. Evan, could it be that you were the one who did this to Councillor Torch Endeavor this time? Immediately afterwards, a few drops of sweat appeared on Makarov's forehead. He was afraid that Evan would take a wrong path. Of course not. Evan shook his head, all of this can only be regarded as a coincidence. In fact, even if they don't care about this matter, Torch Endeavor will be unharmed, because in Evan's perception, there is a fool who is currently being held in Torch Endeavor's custody. Yes, in the prison about 2 or 3 kilometers away from this station. Phew, then I can rest assured. There are some things we can't do. That's the bottom line. After hearing what Evan said, Makarov heaved a sigh of relief, and incidentally educated everyone present. Don't worry, Guildmaster. Also, if you don't chase after him, it will be too late. Evan pointed to the magic vehicle taking off outside the window. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up. We have to perform well. Makarov stared at the magic vehicle flying directly into the sky outside the window, his eyes widened. Even he rarely saw such a thing. Everyone, sit still. As Evan spoke, he patted the carriage under everyone's feet. Boom. Suddenly, accompanied by a roar, the carriage flew into the sky, following the magic device in front of them closely. At the same time, Something that looks like a chariot-like flying magic device. I'm affirming once again that it's still too late to let me go. As long as I let go, I will treat today's incident as if it didn't happen. But if you continue to be obsessed, wait until the news reaches the council. Other counselors will definitely not let it go. They will definitely send top mages to attack you, even the mages of the 10 wizard saints level, which are not impossible for you to defeat. Torch Endeavor looked seriously at the group of mages who were all dressed and looked the same in front of him. These people belonged to the 5 Bridge Familia of the Dark Guild, and their guild master was being held in the mage prison at the moment. They think of themselves as the children of the guild master, and the purpose of this group of people is self-evident, naturally to release their father. We know what you said is very true, but please forgive us for being so hard to follow. As long as our father can be released, even if we have to go through fire and water. The head of the 5 Bridge Familia, who looked like the eldest son, spoke coldly to Torch Endeavor. It's troublesome. However, since the matter is so big, Mr. Makarov will notice. As long as Mr. Makarov takes action. Torch Endeavor looked a little panicked, and now his mind was pinned on Makarov and the others he met on the train. It seems we have arrived. Not long after, the eldest son of the 5 Bridge Familia showed a slight smile. He pulled Torch Endeavor to the deck of the magic device, and outside there was a huge black cube floating in the sky. It was the mage prison. Stop those who come. As 5 Bridge Familia's family approached, countless black square guards approached the crowd and issued bursts of warning sounds at the same time. If you don't want your warden to die, then please open the gate of the prison. The eldest son of the 5 Bridge Familia pinched Torch Endeavor's neck with one hand, raised it high, and aimed at the aircraft. What? It's Warden Torch. The guards inside the grid looked terrified after seeing Torch Endeavor's face clearly. Afterwards, the gate of the prison was opened directly. Thank you for your cooperation. The eldest son of 5 Bridge Familia raised his mouth and flew in with the body. Not long after, when everyone's eyes were on 5 Bridge Familia, an ordinary car also flew into the prison. Inside the huge black cube are small cubes. According to the sentence and the degree of danger, the jailers will imprison the mages in the small cubes according to the rules. And the father of the 5 Bridge Familia is one of the most dangerous prisoners. Please go to the central prison tower. The eldest son of 5 Bridge Familia held Torch Endeavor's neck in his hands, and ordered everyone in a cold voice. Soon 5 Bridge Familia confronted the guards of the prison. Please release Mr. Torch. As for Drum, we will release him. The head jailer Grog Photo, who was holding a huge key, looked at the 5 Bridge Familia with a serious expression. No way. We can't let him go. Torch Endeavor looked at Grog seriously. As the warden of the prison, how could he allow someone to escape from the prison he was guarding? I'm sorry, Mr. Endeavor, although I know this is wrong, but I can't do it. Because for us, you are like a father. As Grog spoke, he waved the key, and in an instant a small black box floated over, and then gently opened it. In an instant, a tall and strong man appeared in front of everyone. He stretched his muscles and bones, then looked at his children and laughed loudly, ha ha ha. Well done, my children, everything is according to plan. My lord father. All the mages in guild robes saluted this strong man respectfully. Now we have fulfilled the agreement and released your father, you can go away. But I think you will be arrested again soon, cherish your time outside. If you come back this time, don't even think about it. Grog looked at the strong man and preached indifferently. What? Guard, are you thinking too much? We're already here, we don't plan to go out. Hearing this, the strong man tied the weapon his son handed over, and looked at Grog coldly. What? Grog panicked when he heard the words. He thought of something bad. This huge fortress will belong to our 5 Bridge Familia from now on. The brawny man showed a ferocious smile. From the very beginning when he was captured, he had been planning to seize the mage prison. It's over. Just as the strong man laughed, Makarov and others descended from the sky accompanied by shocking magical powers. You are. The strong man looked at Makarov, especially the badge on Makarov's chest, and his pupils shrank suddenly. He was seeing one of the 10 wizard saints mages. Chapter 41, Released Criminals. Mr. Makarov, you're here. Torch Endeavor looked at Makarov and others who fell from the sky, as if he saw the savior who saved the prison. No matter how vicious and powerful the 5 Bridge Familia is, it will be unlucky to meet Makarov, one of the 10 wizard saints, and Evan, who is not weaker than the 10 wizard saints. It's not that 5 bridge familia is weak, but that fairy tale is too strong. Makarov. Makarov, one of the 10 wizard saints. The brawny man who had just been released, that is, the guild master of the 5 bridge familia, the boss of the 5 bridge familia, Drum, was shocked after hearing what Torch Endeavor said. Damn! Drum frowned, thinking silently. Makarov, one of the 10 wizard saints, is a monster powerhouse who has been famous for decades. He has already walked a long way on the path of magic, a great senior. Yes, even in the eyes of a lawless and dark guild mage like Drum, the 10 wizard saints can be called their forerunners in the way of magic, elders, seniors, etc. Makarov. At the same time, after hearing Makarov's name, behind Drum, his group of children all showed signs of wavering. The 10 wizard saints. We're saved. As for the guards in the prison, after learning the identity of the visitor, they showed a relaxed expression. And it was only Makarov's name that reversed the situation between the two parties in an instant. This is the gold content of the 10 wizard saints. You think just because you're the 10 wizard saints, I will surrender to you? Don't be so naive. I still have the Torch Endeavor in my hand. Seeing that the situation began to reverse, Drum looked angry. He stared at Makarov viciously, and pointed the spear in his hand at Torch Endeavor. If you dare to attack me, just try it. See if you're faster or my spear is faster. Drum's eyes were firmly locked on Makarov, and he didn't dare to be careless. Facing a strong man at the 10 wizard saints level, even just blinking his eyes lightly would be fatal. I have to find a way to get out of here. Drum stared at Makarov's every move while thinking inwardly. Yes, at this moment he has given up his plan to capture the prison. Facing the powerhouses at the level of the 10 wizard saints, as long as he can retreat completely, it can still be called a victory. It is not shameful to run away from a strong person of this level. No, to be precise, as long as you can escape against a strong player of this level, that is a big victory. Enough to brag to the outside. Little devil! Don't continue to be shameful. Makarov was floating in the sky, his terrifying magic power constantly oscillating. He looked at Drum, who was threatening everyone with a spear in his hand, and taught indifferently. Humph! Do you think I'm the kind of soft-legged shrimp who will be scared and unable to walk if you give me a casual lecture? To tell you the truth, even if you are the 10 wizard saints, I, Drum, are not afraid. Drum looked at Makarov and roared angrily, and then smiled coldly. He was different from those soft bastards who were so frightened and begged for mercy when they saw the 10 wizard saints. He would never beg for mercy. Boom! Before Drum could say anything more, a terrifying pressure fell from the sky, causing Drum's body to freeze. At the same time, a powerful suction force directly pulled Torch Endeavor, who was a hostage, over, and landed beside a crowd of guards. Evan landed in front of Torch Endeavor and asked. Are you okay, Uncle? Hey! Thanks to your help, Evangelist. Torch Endeavor looked at Evan, thanking him. It's fine. Evan shook his head, then looked at Drum and the 5 bridge familia. Evan. That Evan who destroyed that Gale mountain range and is called the Son of the Star, with the titles of Collapsing Stars, Flock Star and Polar Star. I didn't expect even a mage like you to come. Drum's pupils trembled after hearing what Torch Endeavor said. Am I that famous? Evan frowned. He remembered that he hadn't done a lot of jobs in total, and what the hell is this Collapsing Stars, Flock Star and Polar Star? Your deeds have already spread throughout the mainland. You are much more famous than I imagined, brat. Makarov looked at Evan and smiled. Nothing makes Makarov happier than seeing his guild members become famous across the continent. Brother Evan is so strong. Grey and Lion looked at Evan with small stars in their eyes, and at the same time thought in their hearts that when they grow up, they will also be famous in the mainland like Evan, and the enemy will call out their name and titles when they see them, then shivered. Ha ha ha, a 10 wizard saints, and a strong man who controls heavenly body magic. Even if I, Drum, loses, it's worth it. While Evan and the others were chatting, Drum suddenly laughed. A criminal like him would only meet some S-level mages from the Guild of Light in the end, but now he actually met the 10 wizard saints, and a strong man who has mastered heavenly body magic who is definitely not weaker than the 10 wizard saints, and even surpasses some 10 wizard saints. He is, so lucky. Drum, who originally planned to escape, changed his mentality because he knew that he could no longer escape. As long as you are all knocked down. My great name can be resounded all over the world, right? The hostages were rescued, and the enemy's strength was too strong, causing Drum, who started to go crazy, to look at Evan and Makarov with a smirk. No, you're thinking too much, I'm not here for a small character like you. Evan shook his head mercilessly as he looked at Drum, who was constantly fantasizing. In the eyes of Evan and others, Drum was not even an appetizer. For Evan, it's a little more tricky. Drum, who was eager to try, immediately lost his excited expression after hearing Evan's words, and his body trembled slightly. The enthusiasm that had been burning in his heart instantly cooled down. This feels very bad. Seeing Drum's expression, Gray and Lion felt palpitations. Eldest son, is that ready? Drum did not continue to attack, but asked behind him. Father, it's ready. The eldest son of the Five-Bridge Familia nodded slightly and replied. Then let's start. When Drum heard this, the corners of his mouth turned up. He wanted all these guys who looked down on him to pay the price. The price of blood. Obey. The eldest son of Five-Bridge Familia received the order, and immediately raised a translucent control plate with the key logo printed on it in his hand. No, that's the key to the prison. A group of guards stared at the translucent control panel with the key logo printed on it in the eldest son's hand. They were taken aback for a moment, and then showed shocked expressions. At some point, one of the guards had already fallen to the ground, and at this moment, the key in the hands of the eldest son of the Five-Bridge Familia was snatched from the guard by the Five-Bridge Familia. Unlock. With the order of the eldest son of Five-Bridge Familia, all the small houses used to hold criminals were opened, and all the evil criminals were released. These criminals are all ruthless characters, and each of them is a headache for the Magic Council. Among them, there are many monsters who have been selected as S-class criminals. Chapter 42, Guildarts at Peace with All. Ha 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 ha. Now the situation has completely reversed. The number of people on our side has increased too much. Even if you are a wizard saint, facing this number of enemies, you will still feel strenuous, right? Drum looked at Evan and Makarov, showing a complacent look, and laughed. Everyone, we are the mages of the Five-Bridge Familia, and now you have been released by me. You have been imprisoned in this damn prison for too long, now let us resist. Let these jailers feel the pain in our hearts. The endless rage. Immediately afterwards, without waiting for Evan and the others to reply, he opened his arms and shouted loudly to the countless criminals in the sky. Ha ha ha. Finally released. These bastard jailers were very arrogant before. This time, I must kill all these damned guys. From now on, this damn prison won't have any jailers. The vicious criminals released by Drum from the dark box looked at the guards of the prison, as well as Evan and the others, and kept roaring. Ha! However, regarding the scene in front of him, Evan just yawned boredly. In fact, Evan let these people open the prison door on purpose. Evan had seen the small movements of the Five-Bridge Familia long ago. If he wanted to, the moment he met these idiots, these people would have fallen. And the reason why he gave these people the opportunity to open the prison cell was because. Get to positions. Don't be afraid. As the head of the guard, Grog stared at the criminals in mid-air, and asked the guards behind him to hold weapons and prepare for battle. And Grog himself stood at the forefront of all the guards, waiting for the enemy's attack at any time. Kia! What are you doing? Don't touch me! It was also just after Grog asked the guards to line up that the female guard's screams sounded from the guards behind Grog. What? Grog froze for a moment, then looked back. He saw behind everyone, at some point, there was an uncle with short brown red hair and a pitch-black cloak. At this moment, this uncle was hugging two tall female guards with outstanding appearance, and kept raising and lowering his hands, saying, all kinds of flirts. While the other guards held weapons in their hands and nervously looked at the criminal who had arrived among the crowd at some point in time. Makarov and the others also turned their heads when they heard the movement behind them. The moment he saw Guildarts, his pupils trembled, and he murmured, it's him. It really is you. Guildarts, I can feel your magic power from a long distance away. While Makarov was in shock, Evan sighed as he looked at the man with short brown red hair. That's right. The coquettish uncle with short brown red hair and holding two beautiful girls is none other than Guildarts himself. Well, I also feel your magic power, Evan. After hearing what Evan said, Guildarts turned his head and looked over. A person you know. The gatekeeper who was surrounding Guildarts didn't know what to do when he saw that Guildarts and Evan knew each other. Who is this wretched uncle? Grey and Lion looked at Gildarts with the same doubts. In their eyes, Gildarts was a lecherous and perverted uncle. They originally planned to rescue the girls who was hugged by Gildarts, but after hearing the conversation between Evan and Gildarts, they put away their magic, looked at Evan and asked in doubt. To be honest, they didn't think Evan would know such a wretched person. After listening to Grey and Lion's questioning, Evan let out a sigh of relief, looked listlessly at Grey and Lion and replied. Although I don't want to admit it, but this wretched guy in front of you now is also a member of Fairy Tale. And it is the strongest male mage, whose name is Gildarts Clive. This wretched uncle is also the mage of Fairy Tale. And he's the strongest male mage in Fairy Tale. Could it be that he is stronger than Evan? After hearing what Evan said, Grey and Lion were taken aback for a moment, then widened their eyes and looked at Evan in disbelief. Yeah, stronger than me. Evan replied truthfully. It's simply unimaginable. After hearing Evan's answer, Grey and Lion were once again so shocked that their eyes widened. These are not important, the important thing is. Gildarts, why did you come here? Isn't this a prison for prisoners? And what are you doing now? Let go of the two girls in your arms. Makarov looked at Gildarts with a shocked expression on his face. He did feel the magic of Gildarts nearby, but Makarov never thought that Gildarts would be caught in prison, or rather, Makarov is good at self-hypnosis. Before he saw Gildarts, he had always firmly believed that Gildarts might just be passing by. As a result, Makarov was talking, and the more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and finally roared angrily, and punched Gildarts on the head with his fist. Guildmaster, it really hurts. Gildarts felt the giant fist of love on his head, and let go of the girls in his arms with a look of lovelessness. Makarov came to Gildarts, looked at Gildarts and asked angrily. It does not matter. Gildarts, answer me first. The question I asked you just now, how did you get here? Could it be, you did something illegal? Afterwards, Makarov looked around and found that no one was staring at him, so he whispered to Gildarts, Idiot, didn't I say it? If you overdid it, you have to run away quickly. How did you get caught? Did you get caught? If you were caught, it would be troublesome, I guess you will be locked up for at least a week. Ah, it's not what you think. Guildmaster. Gildarts looked at Makarov, who leaned his head closer, scratched his broken red hair, and thought about how he should explain this matter to the Guildmaster. That's needless to say. Guildmaster. What kind of person is Gildarts, don't you understand? Evan floated to Makarov's side at this moment, and interrupted. Look, Evan still understands me. Gildarts didn't expect that Evan would speak to him. Not long ago, he had a slight advantage over Evan, and left Evan alone on the ice field, and ran away by himself. Thinking about it now, what he did at that time was indeed it's too much. No matter what, he should also cover Evan with a quilt, make a good disguise and run. Otherwise, if some monsters accidentally saw Evan lying casually on the snow, and regarded Evan as a corpse and food, wouldn't those monsters be dangerous? Gildarts must have been imprisoned here after molesting a decent woman in public. Evan didn't even think about it, and directly preached. Based on Evan's understanding of Gildarts, it's pretty much the same. Yes, 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 just like what Evan said, I molested women from good families in public, that's why I was caught here. What? Gildarts, who was still nodding his head incessantly, suddenly noticed something wrong when he was talking with Evan. He raised his head to look at Evan, and then roared angrily, That's not the case. You bastard! Chapter 43, Crushing Evil, Spreading the Truth Empyrean. Apart from this reason, you don't have other reasons, right? Anyway, it must be because of women. Uncle Pervert. Evan looked at the furious Gildarts and said unwillingly to be outdone. The veins on Gildarts' forehead tensed up, and he roared angrily as he looked at Evan. Although it is indeed because of women, it is not what you said at all. I came here because a beautiful woman entrusted me with a job. You bastard! Also, I have endured you for a long time before. I am only in my 30s, and I am still a few years away from 40, so I am not an uncle yet. Young people can only be called uncles after they are 40. This is common sense. Bastard! Remember it for me. Although a person over 30 may not necessarily become an uncle, but you are undoubtedly an uncle. Uncle Pervert. Evan was not used to Gildarts at all, and continued to speak angrily. According to Gildarts' logic, when Gildarts reaches 40 years old, he will definitely tell others that it is common sense that a man can only be called an uncle when he is 50. Asshole. Words are useless. So Evan is not fazed to the color criticism in front of him at all. Little brat, I understand. You want to fight, right? Gildarts could tell that the brat in front of him was trying to provoke him. Fight. Come on. I will take revenge on the ice field now. Evan moved his muscles and bones, and the magic power in his body kept boiling. And if you look carefully, at this moment, the guild medals of Evan and Gildarts once again shone brightly. The emotions of the two of them are constantly rising. Then give it a try. Brat. When the time comes, I'll punch you and cry, so you go back to find mom. When Gildarts said this, he put on a cheap expression. Hee hee. Facing Gildarts' ridicule, Evan just smiled coldly. For a moment, the magic power between the two kept stirring. In an instant, Evan and Gildarts had entered fairy tale mode. You two, stop. Makarov looked at Gildarts and Evan, who were boiling with magic power, and said to stop them. However, Gildarts and Evan acted as if they didn't hear it, and both of them stared at each other directly. Damn it, they can't listen anymore. Makarov looked at Gildarts and Evan, who could not hear him safely, with cold sweat streaming down his forehead. The next second, Gildarts and Evan collided together, and the terrifying airflow spread from between the two of them towards the surroundings. Not good. The terrifying air current made Makarov push the guards behind him, far away from Evan and Gildarts, for fear that the aftermath between the two would affect Counselor Torch Endeavor. To be honest, if Counselor Torch Endeavor was not there, Makarov would definitely try to stop Evan and Gildarts, but the magical confrontation between the three would definitely affect the guards. In fighting. At the same time, the criminals who were released at this moment were all stunned at the top-notch Evan and Gildarts, completely unaware of what happened. Hey! Don't ignore me! I'm your opponent! Bastard! Drum looked at the awesome Evan and Gildarts, his eyes were bloodshot. He is not an unknown person. It's unbearable to be ignored now. It's a pity that there is no one other than each other in the eyes of Evan and Gildarts right now. Bastard! Then all of you, die! After Drum found that his words had no effect and Evan and Gildarts still ignored him, roaring, it turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Gildarts and Evan. Be careful! Counselor Torch looked at Drum, who was galloping towards him, and immediately reminded Evan and Gildarts. Ha ha ha! I'm taking your heads! Drum laughed loudly, and raised the spear in his hand towards Evan and Gildarts. Who are you? However, before Drum could launch an attack, he saw Evan and Gildarts, who were pushing the bull, backhanded towards Drum. Boom! Evan and Gildarts punched each other tightly, and the armor on Drum's body was instantly shattered. Blood spewed out from both eyes and ears, and he rolled and fell to the ground, completely losing consciousness. Hey, are you kidding me? That S-class criminal, the super murderous Drum, was instantly solved with a single punch. These two people weren't worried at all. It's a complete monster. Counselor Torch stared at Drum, who was instantly solved, and finally turned into a wry smile. My lord father! Damn it, don't let them get away with this. The five bridge familia looked at the downed Drum and rushed towards Evan and Gildarts like they went crazy one by one. Do you also want to interrupt our battle? Evan and Gildarts looked at the five bridge familia who were running towards them. Without talking nonsense, they waved their fists at the same time. In an instant, dozens of people from the five bridge familia collapsed to the ground. I remembered. At this time, the criminal who was just released was standing in the black grid, looking at the five bridge familia who had been solved in seconds. As if thinking of something, he stretched out his trembling fingers and pointed at Gildarts and said, "This is the bastard mage who claims to be the strongest in the West, who can't do anything except strength." Gildarts. What? Originally, Gildarts was very satisfied when he heard the prisoner say that the West is the strongest, but when he heard the prisoner say that he is a bastard mage who can't do anything except strength, he frowned, and his anger was accumulating. The mage of this dark guild in front of him is completely talking nonsense. Apart from his strength, he, Gildarts, also has a cute appearance that matches his strength. I've heard of it too. I heard that his favorite thing to do is peeping at women's bathhouses. Although he is the mage of the legal guild, he does all the things that even the mages of the dark guild look down on. Someone added. Yet. Immediately, other people also kept booing. They seemed to have heard the rumors about Gildarts. Are you finished? Just when everyone was chatting happily, Gildarts unexpectedly came behind the crowd at some point, and he returned to the black grid where he was originally. A group of criminals looked at Gildarts and fell silent. After talking, let's go on the road together. Crushing evil, spreading the truth, Empyrean. As Gildarts spoke, he punched all the criminals. The terrifying magic power directly swept away all the mages. All the criminals present were sent flying into the sky. Let them kiss the ceiling affectionately. However, the white fist hit by that fist still didn't stop. Its target is Evan, who stands under everyone. Hee. Gravity fist raging tiger. Evan looked at the fist formed by magic power attacking towards him, and sneered. The endless waves of gravity and the power of Devil Slayer converged towards his fist. In the next second, a huge tiger appeared behind Evan, roared, and rushed towards Gildarts, crushing evil, spreading the truth, Empyrean. Boom! The moment Evan's fist collided with Gildarts' fist, the huge magical power directly sent all the criminals who had just fallen from the sky flying, and no one was spared. Even the mage prison floating in the air began to shake violently. Cracks continue to spread, as if they are about to shatter. Hey! Even our prison is about to collapse. Even the prison made of magic stones can't handle the battle between the two of them? What an exaggerated combat power! By the way, the price of the magic ceiling stones has increased, right? I don't know how much money will be lost now. The guards looked shocked at the prison where cracks were constantly forming. Money? Wow! Makarov didn't hear what he said before, but he heard the word money and looked at Evan and Gildarts, who were making a fuss in spite of the prison, and Makarov burst into tears with a wow. His heart is bleeding. How much should he pay for this? Chapter 44, Leave. Stop it! Stop it! After Makarov yelled several times, he found that he couldn't stop Evan and Gildarts. I said stop quickly. You bastards! Makarov was completely enraged. His eyes lit up with golden light, and his body gradually grew bigger. In an instant, his head was attached to the ceiling of the prison, and his feet directly collapsed to the platform on the center floor of the prison. The guards of the prison stared at Makarov, who had suddenly turned into a giant. Boom! Before the guards could calm down from the shock, Makarov, who had turned into a giant, punched Evan and Gildarts violently. At the same time, he roared angrily, "You group of disobedient little devils! Go to hell! Not good!" Evan and Gildarts, who were fighting happily, looked at Makarov, who made a sudden attack, and the two immediately dodged. So much so that Makarov's shocking punch finally landed on the dark prison. Crack, click, click. In an instant, there was only a slight crack in the prison, and it began to spread in all directions. Makarov looked at the result of his punch. His forehead was covered with beads of sweat. To put it simply, it's not that the whole family does not enter the house. The reason why Makarov has been restraining himself from forcibly separating Evan and Gildarts is because the destructive power of Makarov's magic is much stronger than Evan's. The magic of Evan and Gildarts is only high but not low. Boom! In the end, with the efforts of Evan, Gildarts, and Makarov, the prison shattered directly with a roar, and everyone inside the prison fell towards the ground. Guildmaster! I've said it before, a mage like you shouldn't take it lightly. Evan and Gildarts looked at Makarov, who destroyed the prison with a punch, and roared at the same time. Yes, I'm sorry. At this moment, Makarov has regained his figure, apologizing to everyone without tears. But it's too late. Amidst the howling sound of the strong wind, the prison fell into the canyon, causing a shocking explosion. Fortunately, the jailers and guards survived safely with the help of Evan's gravity. Everyone floated in the air, looking at the broken prison on the ground, lost in thought. Sorry. Makarov kept bowing and apologizing to Torch Endeavor, and the little old man's eyes were almost turning red from crying. No, to be honest, this can't be on you. It's all about 5 Bridge Familia. Torch Endeavor looked at Makarov, who kept bowing and apologizing, waved his hands, and said with a wry smile. Really? Thank you so much. Hearing this, Makarov held Torch Endeavor's hand tightly with both hands, and thanked him. Interesting. Torch Endeavor smiled wryly, and he didn't know what to say, but it was true that Fairy Tail and the others in front of him were also his saviors. In short, we will find a way to deal with the prison. In fact, the prison will not be used for the time being. After all, there are no prisoners. Torch Endeavor said with a wry smile as he watched the prisoners who fell into the canyon together with the prison. A few hours later, after the guard gate of the prison entered the fallen prison for a while to recuperate, the prison with several large holes barely flew into the sky again. In short, the next step is the work of the repair team. According to the current situation in the prison, it can be finished in 3 months. 3 months is within our acceptable range. After all, among the prisoners, the one with the least injuries will also need to lie in a hospital bed for a year. When a few of them came out of the hospital, they would be about to be released, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I don't think they want to be imprisoned in this prison again. The prison warden, Torch Endeavor, looked at the prison flying up behind him and felt very comforted. Fortunately, their prison was hard enough and of good quality. After emergency repairs, they could barely make use of it, is now lying on a stretcher beside him, and the least injured one can barely speak. I want to sue you, your prison can't even guarantee the safety of prisoners. The only prisoner who was still awake had tears in his eyes. Being sober now is a kind of pain. He felt as if there were countless ants crawling around all over his body, which was extremely uncomfortable. Give him another year in prison. After hearing what the prisoner said, Torch Endeavor said to the guards around him, "Obey." The guard heard the words and added 1 year to the sentence of the prisoner who shouted to complain. Immediately, the last prisoner who was about to speak also shut his mouth. Ugh! Torch Endeavor heaved a sigh of relief seeing the prisoner who had finally shut up, and then turned to look at Makarov and the others. He bowed lightly and thanked, "Anyway, thanks to Fairy Tale this time, I will forever engrave this kindness in my heart." No, this is what we should do." Makarov shook his head again and again, and helped the bowing Torch Endeavor up. "Now I finally know why Senior Yajima always cares about Fairy Tale so much." Torch Endeavor's words meant that he was on Yajima's side. "By the way, speaking of it, if I encounter some criminals in the future, I wonder if I can ask Fairy Tale to send the criminals under my name?" Torch Endeavor asked Makarov. Of course Makarov narrowed his eyes, as if he understood something. Ah ha 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 ha. Then the two old foxes, Torch Endeavor and Makarov, laughed loudly. "Goodbye, Mr. Torch Endeavor." Then Makarov and others said goodbye to Torch Endeavor. "Goodbye, Fairy Tale." Accompanied by his subordinates, he waved at Makarov and the others. "Grog, report the whereabouts of Makarov and others to the Magic Council." Not long after Makarov and the others left, Torch Endeavor looked at the warden of the prison beside him and ordered. That is not good, warden. After all, Fairy Tale helped us just now, so it's too for us to catch them now." Grog looked at Torch Endeavor with a sad face. "You must know that Fairy Tale had helped them just now, and now they made trouble as soon as they left. Even if it was ordered by his father, Torch Endeavor, there is also some hesitation." "Stupid, I asked you to report that Fairy Tale helped us solve the problem. Also, Fairy Tale belongs to the legal guild. Why do you show an expression like you are treating them like a dark guild? Our council will not catch Fairy Tale." Torch Endeavor looked at Grog's expression and was speechless for a while, then educated him. "Oh! By the way, Fairy Tale is from the legal guild. I forgot. I will report now." After hearing Torch Endeavor's words, Grog's eyes lit up, and then he hurriedly ran to inform the council. Ugh! Torch Endeavor sighed looking at Grog's appearance, and at the same time thought in his heart, if he didn't notify the Magic Council, he really wouldn't know what other troubles would happen to the lineup of Fairy Tale. As for the lineup destroying towns and mountains, such things can be called trivial matters, right? Ugh! Thinking of this, Torch Endeavor sighed helplessly again. Fairy Tale really makes people love and hate. Chapter 45, The strongest team of the first generation assembles. Not long after Evan and the others left, the Magic Council. "What are you saying? Tell me again. Are you kidding me?" A member of the Magic Council who looked like he was in his 30s or 40s looked distortedly at the soldier who was reporting information to him. This counselor is known throughout the council for his good temper and elegant posture. But when he heard the information reported by the soldiers to him, the elegance he had been trying to maintain in the past disappeared. At this moment, he widened his eyes, looked angrily at the soldiers of the council in front of him, and asked. That? The soldier was taken aback for a moment. He didn't expect the counselor in front of him to be so shocked after hearing the information he reported. To be honest, the reason why he came to report to the counselor in front of him was precisely because this counselor has a good temper, but now it seems that this counselor is not as good-tempered as everyone rumored. But right now, the soldier, who has nothing to do with it, had no choice but to bite the bullet and report again to the members of the Magic Council in front of them. Guildmaster Makarov, along with his members Guildarts, Evan, Gray, and Lion, are heading west together, and the target is probably the Fairy Tale Guild in the small town of Magnolia. You mean, Counselor Torch Endeavor just reported that? The head of Fairy Tale, Makarov, one of the 10 wizard saints. There's also that shattering mage who uses super advanced destructive magic and uses it like a normal magic. The only monster in the entire continent that uses super magic as basic magic is the bastard mage Guildarts, known as the strongest mage in the West. There's also Evan, who uses real celestial body magic as a stone to hit people, and throws meteors on other people's heads every now and then. The strongest female mage in the north, who created the that is absolutely frozen, is heading west together in a team. There is a high probability that their target will be the Fairy Tale Guild, right? Are you kidding me? How can you report the destination of such a few people in the word approximate? If there is a slight mistake, do you know what will happen? The counselor looked at the soldier in front of him with a headache, and roared angrily. This. The soldier was sweating profusely, but he didn't refute anything. In fact, the lack of information was indeed their problem, although it wasn't his fault. Just picking out one of the people here is enough to give us a headache, and now they're all gathered. I remember that Guildarts is nominated every year when the 10 Wizard Saints is selected, but every time he loses is because of his character. There is also Evan and After the subjugating Deliera, the council decided to list these two people as candidates for the 10 Wizard Saints. Do you know what this means? After listening to the reports from his subordinates, the counselor's head became dizzy, and his face was gloomy. Evan, Makarov, and Guildarts picked out one at random, and they were all the key investigation targets of the council, although he didn't know much about but the so-called birds of a feather flock together. Since can mix with Makarov and other fairy tale bastards, she is definitely not a good bird. And when any of these problem children, who are loved and hated by members of the council, get together. At this moment, the counselors don't dare to think about it anymore. The picture is really beautiful. One of the 10 Wizard Saints, 3 candidates for the 10 Wizard Saints with the strength equal to the 10 Wizard Saints. 4 10 Wizard Saints level powerhouses gathered together to do a job. Are you kidding me? Are they going to form a group to attack a country? Is there any country on this continent that needs 4 mages of the 10 Wizard Saints level to attack together? The member of the Magic Council felt his brain constantly roaring. He was already starting to feel dizzy. Immediately afterwards, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed from anger to panic. No. According to fairy tales habits, it's definitely not as simple as attacking a country. Really? So that's the case, these evil goblins finally can't bear it. Hee. I knew that sooner or later they would make it this far. Is Fairy Tale planning to go to war with the Magic Council? The more the counselor said, the more he believed. In the end, he was so frightened that he began to tremble. What happened? Just when the middle-aged counselor was trembling with fear from his own thoughts, an old voice sounded from behind him. Member Yajima, you are finally here, something is wrong. We might be attacked. Although the counselor looked like a middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s, he was relatively young among the counselors. When he saw Yajima, he seemed to see his savior. His eyes were full of tears. He ran to Yajima. What? Someone wants to attack the Magic Council. After Yajima heard the words of the middle-aged counselor, his expression was startled. Since becoming a member of the Magic Council decades ago, Yajima has never met a mage who dared to act wildly in the Magic Council. That Makarov of the 10 Wizard Saints. Guildarts of Crush. Evan of Collapsing Stars. There's also the in the northeast who invented ice magic, all together. The counselor watched Yajima speak nervously. Oh, did also join Fairy Tale? It seems that Pony's guild is getting stronger and stronger. Speaking of which, Pony, Guildarts, Evan, and if these 4 people form a team, isn't it the strongest team in Fairy Tale? Ah, I really miss it. It reminds me of when I was young, when Pony, Rob, Bob, poor Lyusica, and Goldman were all there, when we were all young. Yajima's eyes flickered, and he began to recall the time when he and the others were all powerful on the continent of Ishgar when they were young. Mr. Yajima. Now is not the time to be in a daze. Think about it. On this continent, where is there any job on that requires these 4 people to perform as a team? Based on my experience, these 4 monsters are very likely to attack the Magic Council. The middle-aged counselor looked at the dazed Yajima and hurriedly said, Ahem. I'm sorry to make you laugh, people love memories when they get old. Yajima smiled at the counselor who looked at him, who was still too young. To be honest, he is indeed old, and he should retire. Unfortunately, Fairy Tale and Pony make him worry. Without his help in the council, it is not certain how the ignorant juniors in the council would treat the goblins. There is still a pony in his tail, so he needs his old bones to stick to it for a few years. At least until the pony kids are all grown up. Hee. Thinking of this, Yajima laughed again. However, in the eyes of this middle-aged counselor, Yajima, who was originally sober, became dazed again, and then woke up again. This made the middle-aged counselor wonder whether Yajima had Alzheimer's. Mr. Yajima, we don't have time for you to stay in a daze. Please hurry up and organize the meeting of the Magic Council. I think it is necessary to face Makarov, Gildarts, Evan, and others. Therefore, it is very necessary for us to activate the Etherean. The middle-aged counselor has a serious face. Facing the 4 top mages in the mainland, it is completely unrealistic to use regular troops to defeat these 4. In front of the top mages, no amount of miscellaneous soldiers is useless. Therefore, the middle-aged counselor thought that it is necessary to use the foundation of the Magic Council, the Etherean, which is enough to destroy of an entire country in a short moment. Chapter 46, Dur and Gildarts. Hey! Etherean! That thing is not for dealing with ordinary mages. It is something used to protect the safety of the entire Ishgar. When Yajima heard this, his eyes widened. Using that kind of thing to deal with ordinary humans is too exaggerated. That thing can only be used to protect the safety of the Ishgar continent. I believe that when Makarov, Gildarts, Evan, and Nur got together, they have already brought a huge disaster to the entire continent. It is a complete cancer on the Ishgar continent. If we can't restrict Fairy Tale, I don't know what will happen in the future. The current Fairy Tale doesn't care about us council anymore. When more and more powerful people join Fairy Tale, I am afraid. The middle-aged counselor looked at Yajima, his eyes shone with seriousness. He thought from the bottom of his heart that Makarov, Evan, and others were cancerous tumors and pests on the continent of Ishgar. Have to be cleared. Hee. After hearing the words of the middle-aged counselor in front of him, Yajima only smiled lightly. Now he finally understood that the counselor in front of him was just planning to take advantage of the current opportunity to make a fuss about Fairy Tale. This kind of thinking is normal, but it should be beaten. I don't know if you have ever thought about the consequences we will face if we disband Fairy Tale. Yajima asked with a smile on the counselor in front of him, with his hands behind his back. Consequences? The counselor was taken aback for a moment, as if he hadn't thought about what Yajima said at all. Makarov is one of the 10 wizard saints, and his qualifications are also sufficient. If he is not the guild master of the Fairy Tale Guild, then the members of the Magic Council will definitely take his position as one of 10 wizard saints. Think about it, one of our council members becomes 10 wizard saints, so who will be kicked out of our full council? There is a high probability that we will find a member with the lowest qualifications and strength, both for 10 wizard saints and the Magic Council. Do you think this is right, counselor? Yajima put his hands behind his back and smiled slightly at the middle-aged man in front of him. In an instant, the middle-aged counselor panicked. It is true that he has always regarded the defeat of Fairy Tale as his political goal, but once Fairy Tale is disbanded, he has never thought about what will happen. Now think about it, once the dissolution of Fairy Tale happens, it would have the biggest impact on him. Yajima had already frightened the middle-aged counselor in front of him, so Yajima smiled, patted the middle-aged man's shoulder lightly, and then spoke in a calm tone. Anyway, leave this matter to me. You don't need to worry. I will let Makarov and the others return to their guild honestly. If Makarov and the others do something outrageous along the way, I will bear everything. Then, I'm counting on you. After hearing Yajima's words, this middle-aged man who had just become a member of council immediately bowed slightly towards Yajima and thanked him. Anyway, Fairy Tale is a cancer. If someone is willing to help him take responsibility, he can't wait. Hee. Yajima didn't say anything. He smiled slightly, turned around, and walked away with his hands behind his back. The other side. On the road, when Makarov, Evan, and the others were on their way to a nearby town, Gildarts approached Ur. After sizing up Grey and Lion, he smiled at Ur and asked, "Did you give birth to 2 more? You're still the same as I remember." The veins on Ur's forehead tensed up, angrily yelled at Gildarts. "Anyway, these 2 are my apprentices. It doesn't seem like a long time since we last met, right? Also, Lion and Grey must be 8 or 9 years old already." "Ah? Is that so? I'm sorry, I'm sorry. These 2 brats look so uncut, they must not be your children." Gildarts immediately apologized to Ur after hearing the words, and at the same time he seemed relieved. "In short, you finally found a reason to continue fighting, right? Ur." Gildarts looked at Ur and asked with a smile. "Yet. There's no other way. Since I've accepted these apprentices, I have to set a good example for my apprentices. If I wait, they can't continue to fight." After hearing what Gildarts said, Ur smiled. "She has regained her lost identity as a mage." "Oh? Do you 2 know each other?" Makarov looked at Gildarts and Ur, who seemed to be very familiar, and moved between the 2 of them, with a curious expression. His eyes seemed to say to Gildarts and Ur. Following Makarov's question, Grey and Lion also perked up their ears. Only Evan was exploring the way ahead alone, as if he was completely uninterested in what was going on behind him. "Guildmaster, you are so annoying." Gildarts looked at Makarov, who got in between him and Ur, and spoke with a displeased face. "Hey," regarding what Gildarts said, Makarov just smiled. "I won't tell you." Gildarts acted like he didn't intend to tell Makarov. "I'm the Guildmaster." Seeing that Gildarts didn't intend to satisfy the hearts of his curious crowd, Makarov immediately said in displeasure. "Hee." Gildarts turned his head and smiled contemptuously. He would not be threatened by Makarov as the Guildmaster in such a matter. "Gildarts and I have met once." Ur looked like a child, and Makarov and Gildarts talked helplessly. "The 2 of us met by chance. At that time, I was walking aimlessly in the snow, and suddenly I heard someone crying for help. After walking forward, I found that someone was attacked by a monster. After I dealt with the monsters, I happened to meet Gildarts, who came to hunt them down as well." Ur paused at this point. Gildarts actually snatched someone else's prey, is really inferior." "You think so too, Ur?" Makarov cast a contemptuous glance at Gildarts before turning his head to ask Ur. Tisk. After hearing Makarov's words, Gildarts clicked his tongue and said nothing. "No. I was careless. I didn't expect that there was more than one monster. Under the mountain-like monster, there was another bigger and more ferocious monster. Dealing with the monsters before has exhausted my strength. When encountering larger monsters, even I am not fully sure that I can defeat them. Hehe, I was thinking at the time that I should try my best to stop the monster in front of me, and let Gildarts beside me escape. Just when I asked Gildarts if he had confidence in his foot strength, and if he could escape. At that time, Gildarts made a move, and with just one blow, he defeated the monster that made me tremble. It was also on that day that my world was opened, and I realized that there is such a powerful mage in this world, and how weak I am." Ur was very moved. On that day, she finally realized how vast the sky she was in was. Is this uncle in front of us really better than Ur and Evan? After hearing Ur's words, Grey and Lion looked at Gildarts in shock. "See, Guildmaster. I am such a handsome man." However, at this moment, Gildarts was speaking arrogantly to Makarov with a proud face. "I can't tell at all." Grey and Lion complained in their hearts. It was hard for them to imagine that the greasy, lecherous uncle in front of them was actually such a powerful mage. Chapter 47, Gildarts snatched the women and ran away. The riverside town of Moan. Gildarts came to the hotel and opened 3 rooms. Gildarts had a room alone, Ur, Grey and Lion had a room, and then Makarov and Evan had a room. After opening the rooms, Gildarts turned around and spoke to the crowd. "I opened 3 rooms, let's take a rest here today. I have a job to do." "Job? What job do you have? Could it be helping a woman to teach a scumbag again this time? But if you're talking about a scumbag, I just saw a guy molesting little girls everywhere." Evan spoke seriously to Gildarts. "What? There is such a thing, then I can't let that scumbag go. Evan, tell me, where is that bastard who molested little girls all day long?" After hearing what Evan said, Gildarts spoke in shock. "Oh, I just saw him run to the toilet." Evan answered Gildarts truthfully. "Thank you, Evan, for providing me with such information. Gildarts was startled. With the aim of protecting young ladies all over the world, he walked into the toilet. He looked around and saw no one in the toilet. In the end, Gildarts looked it was fixed on the huge mirror in the toilet. Gildarts looked at himself in the mirror and fell into deep thought. A few minutes later, Gildarts, who came to his senses, left the toilet, walked up to Evan with a hideous face and yelled angrily. "You little bastard! Do you want to fight? I will accompany you to the end." Evan's face was extremely calm, but the fairy tale thought told him, "Stop talking nonsense, and do it if you don't accept it. Be honest, you two, this is a town. If you two fight, the whole town will disappear." Makarov pushed Evan and Gildarts away, and at the same time he sighed helplessly. He couldn't imagine the consequences of a war between Gildarts and Evan here. Whether it's Gildarts or Evan, the magic of the two is too exaggerated and overbearing. If they fight, the destructive power it will cause is unimaginable. Anyway, you guys will wait here for me. After I finish this last job of subjugating Unicall, let's go back to the guild together. Speaking of which, I miss the guild's beer. Seeing Makarov's face, Gildarts stopped haggling with Evan. He turned around, leaving Evan and the others with a back that he thought was extremely chic, and walked away slowly. "Evan, what job do you think Gildarts will do?" Makarov and Evan leaned on the window, looking at the extremely reckless Gildarts who broke the wall of the hotel, and asked suspiciously. 80% of the jobs are related to women. Evan replied without thinking. "That's right." Makarov nodded helplessly after hearing what Evan said, and then continued to sigh, "Really, all of you are like this, which makes the old man feel worried, and I don't know what you are doing. Isn't it time to grow up? The strongest mage in the guild has such a virtue. I don't know if it is a blessing or a curse. In short, when you are fighting, you must fight with all your strength, and when you rest, you must also rest with all your strength." Makarov believed that the free hotel should not be wasted, and he must take advantage of the free money, so he lay on the bed and rested with his eyes closed. However, Makarov and Evan didn't rest for long, when there was a loud noise from the street outside their window. "What happened?" Makarov with a bald head, who was awakened by the noise, looked at Evan and asked. "Guildmaster, come here quickly. There's a good show to watch." Evan stood by the window. Looking at the scene outside, the corners of his mouth raised slightly. "Good show?" After hearing what Evan said, Makarov slightly narrowed his eyes. Makarov instinctively had great doubts about the word good show in Evan's mouth. Deep in his heart, he had an ominous premonition that was setting off alarm bells for him. After thinking for a few seconds, Makarov walked up to Evan's side, and then his body gradually grew bigger, and then he stopped slowly when Makarov's height surpassed the window sill. "Body, looking out from the window. Get out of the way. Don't get in the way." On the street, a middle-aged man with short reddish-brown hair combed back and wearing a dark cloak was running forward with two women in his arms. Not far behind this man was someone desperately chasing him, the target needless to say, is this uncle himself. "That's Gildarts, right? And he's carrying two girls on his shoulders, right?" Looking at the scene outside the window, Makarov's eyes trembled, and his heart tightened. He knew that the good show that Evan said was definitely not a good thing. Yes, at this moment, the man with short reddish-brown hair carrying the two girls forward is none other than Gildarts. They saw Gildarts holding two girls in his arms. One of them looked to be about 20 years old, wearing a sexy cheap dress, and looked like a worker from a certain place. The other one looked sloppy, the clothes on her body were mostly patches, and she looked about the same age as Evan. If you look closely, the two girls are somewhat similar in appearance, maybe they are sisters. "Don't run away. Give me back my people. No matter which guild you are a mage, you are not allowed to mess around like this." Behind Gildarts, is a tall mage with a feeding bottle in his mouth and is running fast. On this mage's body is a short middle-aged man with a wretched appearance. At this moment, this middle-aged man is crazily shouting at Gildarts. "Evan, what do you think of the current situation?" Looking at the scene before him, Makarov fell into deep thought. Probably Gildarts took a fancy to the boss's waiter, and then he picked up the waiter and the waiter's sister and carried them away together. Evan analyzed the scene in his eyes, then he continued to add, "But Gildarts is the same, his hands and feet are too sloppy. He was discovered by that boss. If it were me, I would definitely do it without letting anyone find out. No matter what the reason is, it's not right to do this, right?" Makarov sighed helplessly, and then his eyes flickered with a golden light. Damn Gildarts, when you have to do something wrong, there is a limit to it. I won't let him go. Evan thought for a while and continued to speak. Actually, there is another possibility. Those two girls are the targets of Gildart's job. Gildart's. But before Evan finished speaking, Makarov roared and jumped directly from the second floor. He fell behind the boss who was chasing Gildarts, and then his body continued to grow, turning into a giant in a blink of an eye, and ran wildly on the street. It seems that the guild master didn't hear what I said afterwards. Really, all of them are too worrying. Evan sighed helplessly as he watched Makarov jump from the window onto the street without waiting for him to finish speaking. Chapter 48, Chase. Oops. A troublesome guy has appeared. At the same time, on the street, Gildarts noticed Makarov behind him. A few drops of unnatural sweat appeared on his cheeks, and then he saw a burst of terrifying magic power erupting from his body. Girls, hold tight, I'm going to speed up. As Gildarts spoke, his figure turned into an afterimage and headed straight for the hunting ship at the pier. The two girls who were hugged by Gildarts were shocked. They couldn't even open their eyes due to the strong wind. This. What kind of monster is this? Milk Boy, speed up. Speed up. As for the boss who was riding a tall mage behind Gildarts, he also noticed Makarov running wildly behind him, with a terrified expression on his face, and kept urging the mage under him. Oh. The mage named Milk Boy took out a bottle of milk from his trouser pocket and poured it into his mouth continuously. As the milk entered the baby's stomach, bursts of milky white gas burst out of his body instantly, and the speed, in an instant, gave birth to a whole new level. What is that strange creature? Evan on the second floor of the hotel looked at the three people running wildly on the street. The corners of his eyes twitched slightly. What's the situation on street, Evan? What are the guild master and Gildarts doing? Just as Evan was looking at the three people running wildly on the street, unable to describe his mood at the moment with words, the door behind him was pushed open forcefully, and Noor strode into it, looked at Evan and asked. Anyway, it's not a race. I'll go and have a look. Noor, look after the children. After Evan finished speaking, he flew out of the window and headed straight for Gildarts. After a few minutes, Gildarts had already arrived at the pier first, and he looked anxiously at the captain and said, Captain, I'm going to hunt Unical. Are these two girls also hunting Unical together? The middle-aged captain with a pipe in his mouth looked Gildarts up and down, then looked at the two girls in Gildarts' arms and asked. Of course, we're together. Gildarts nodded slightly, then directly embraced the girls in his arms, and jumped onto the ship. Sail the ship, sail the ship. It's not good to miss the opportunity. After jumping onto the ship, Gildarts smiled at the captain of the hunting ship who was still below. What a monster! The captain gave Gildarts a slightly surprised look, then turned around and immediately gave an order to the sailors around him, we're going out to sea. Sir. After receiving the captain's order, the sailors boarded the hunting ship one after another. Immediately, accompanied by bursts of sirens. This hunting ship, which was used to hunt Unical, finally headed towards the sea. Gildarts. Just as the ship used to hunt Unical was moving forward, a tall figure came roaring to the pier. Hey, hey! Is that a giant? After hearing the sound, the sailors on the hunting ship looked back. They all stared wide-eyed at the tall figure on the pier. Giants are rare even in this magical world. As expected of Makarov. Sure enough, he's fast enough. Gildarts looked at Makarov who had already arrived at the pier, not too far away from them. A few drops of cold sweat poured out on his face. After giving Makarov a fearful look, Gildarts spoke to the sailors on board. Sail quickly. If you are caught up, you will suffer. Don't worry. Mr. Mage, this is the sea, no matter how tall that giant is, it is impossible to walk in the sea. After listening to Gildarts' words, some sailors said with ease. That's not necessarily the case. After hearing what the sailor said, Gildarts shook his head. It would be great if things were really as the sailor said. Gildarts. As Gildarts finished speaking, the giant standing on the pier let out roars, and he stepped into the sea step by step. At the same time, his body began to grow bigger and bigger, and eventually became so big that even standing in the sea, he could still expose his upper body. Immediately afterwards, the giant took big strides and walked towards Gildarts and the others. Are you kidding me? That giant can grow bigger. The sailors stared at the suddenly enlarged Makarov. If it's a joke, that's fine. It's troublesome now. Gildarts looked at Makarov and felt troublesome. He thought about how to explain to Makarov. Speaking of the current situation, even if he explained it seriously, would Makarov listen? And if you insist, these two girls were indeed snatched from that idiot boss. In short, Gildarts, who first explained to Makarov, looked at Makarov and shouted loudly, "Guildmaster, things are not what you imagined. Then give back the girls you stole." Upon hearing this, Makarov replied loudly, "That's impossible." When Gildarts heard the words, without even thinking about it, he directly answered Makarov. Seeing that he could not agree with Makarov, Gildarts said to the sailors around him, "In short, let's do our best to run away." "Oh, all right." The captain of the hunting ship and the sailors nodded repeatedly after hearing what Gildarts said. "No, he's going to catch up now." On the hunting ship, the helmsman at the helm watched Makarov approaching the crowd. His forehead was covered with cold sweat from nervousness. Anyone who is constantly being chased by a huge giant who can stand in the sea like a super monster will probably be so frightened that he will soften his hands, right? Humph. At the same time, Makarov's eyes were shining with golden light as he continued to move forward. He had to teach Gildarts, the bastard who corrupted the guild's atmosphere, a good lesson today. "Guildmaster, it's really not what you think." Gildarts looked at Makarov who kept approaching their hunting ship, and he tried to explain to the other party again. "Whether it's you or Evan, you're all a bunch of bastards who can't hear others. For you disobedient little brats, I have nothing to talk nonsense about. It's useless to talk." At this moment, Makarov seems to have been overwhelmed by the anger in his heart. Completely looking like he couldn't listen to what anyone said, he continued to sail against the wind and waves, heading towards the hunting ship. It seems that there is really no way out now. Gildarts watched Makarov's eyes flicker with white light. No matter what, he had to finish this job first. He explained to Makarov that he couldn't delay the job assigned to him by his employer. Chapter 49, We are the mages of fairy tale. How can we ask soldiers for help? Just as Makarov, who was standing with his feet in the sea, and Gildarts, who was standing on the hunting ship, stood facing each other, and at the moment when they faced each other faintly, accompanied by a groan, Makarov's expression froze. "Hey!" Makarov looked down at the sea below him, and he felt that there seemed to be something in the sea, biting his toes. This is very abnormal, because with Makarov's current size, it is basically impossible for any marine life to provoke him. "What?" Puzzled, Makarov shook his feet vigorously, and then started groping in the sea water in front of him. "That looks very much like a person who ran into a fish in the river on the countryside." After a while, Makarov seemed to have touched something in the sea, and then he fished out the thing he touched out of the water. "I saw a strange fish with a length of more than 10 meters, black horns growing on its head, and multiple eyes on its face, which made people feel creepy and its sand value plummeted. Makarov fished it out of the sea just like that." "Ah! That can't be mistaken, that strange fish is unical." The sailors stared wide-eyed at the strange fish that looked like a small fish in Makarov's hands. That strange fish was the main culprit that prevented the residents of the town from going out to sea to hunt. It was a monster named Unical. At this moment, the overlord of the ocean is timidly looking at Makarov whose head is twice as big as him, and dare not take a breath. Makarov's eyes glowed with white light. After looking at Unical for a while, he recognized what was in his hand. He recalled that before he left, Gildarts seemed to have mentioned that he was going to subjugate Unical. Then, he immediately picked up the Unical in his hand, aimed at Gildarts, and then threw it there. "Go to hell! Hey, hey, hey! Isn't it very bad right now?" Everyone on the ship widened their eyes as they watched the magical beast that broke through the air and quickly approached the hunting ship. "That's Unical. It's really a big help, Guildmaster." Of course, Gildarts also noticed the strange fish that Makarov threw towards the crowd. He stood in front of the crowd excitedly, looked at the approaching strange fish, and gently raised his right hand. Boom! In the next second, accompanied by a flash of white light, the original strange fish instantly disappeared in front of everyone. This terrifying monster with a length of more than 10 meters. The culprit who prevented the residents of an entire town from going out to sea to fish normally, was instantly smashed into countless particles under the white light in Gildarts' hand. This is the power of crush magic. This is why Gildarts is not good at water. In fact, as long as the enemy is not smashed into particles, it means that it's water. So strong. The beautiful girl who was snatched by Gildarts was wearing a cheap dress and looked like a hostess. At this moment, the hair blown by the terrifying airflow kept flying, but she still stared at the front with her eyes wide open. You must know that Unicall is a monster that has troubled the residents of an entire town and cannot go to sea. At the same time, they also tried with the 3 or 4 waves of mages who came to subjugate. Its strength is extremely fierce, but even such a powerful monster is still vulnerable for the red-brown short-haired uncle in front of her. The girl has just discovered that the strength of the mage in front of her may be far beyond her imagination. Woo, I'm saved. The crew members on the ship breathed a sigh of relief seeing Gildarts who solved Unicall in just one blow. Originally, when they saw the strange fish flying towards them, they thought that they and others must be dead. Boom! Just as everyone on board breathed a sigh of relief, the hunting ship under their feet suddenly made a burst of noise. Immediately afterwards, the hunting ship seemed to ignore the gravity of the earth, and flew directly towards the sky. What happened? The ship is flying. What's happening? Everyone on the ship shouted in surprise as they saw the hunting ship suddenly leave the sea. Sister, look quickly. The ship is flying. The girl with fluffy and messy hair about 8 or 9 years old looked at the ships flying up below her, looked at her sister excitedly, and shouted. Yes. The ship is flying. The girl in her 20s was extremely shocked when she saw the hunting ship taking off below her. What she encountered today surprised her far more than the sum of what she encountered in the past 20 years. Is it Evan? At this moment when everyone on the hunting ship was in shock, only Gildarts looked calm. When the ship floated up uncontrollably, he already knew who made the move. Gildarts. It was also the moment when Gildarts noticed the majestic magic power. A young man appeared beside Gildarts and greeted Gildarts casually. It was Evan who came. It's strange, how did he come up here? The people on the hunting ship looked at Evan who appeared out of nowhere, with puzzled expressions. They didn't remember that Evan was on this ship. Anyway, what's going on? Evan looked at Gildarts and asked. The fact is this. The parents of the 2 girls owed the boss money. After the parents of the 2 girls died, the boss used the 2 girls as his own commodities to mortgage the money owed by their parents. The older ones are going to be bartenders, and the younger ones are working in the back office. Although they are said to be a little older, they are still in their teens and are not adults yet. It's just that the makeup makes them look more mature. Then when I was discussing with the boss how to attack Unicall, I happened to meet these 2 people. The elder sister hoped that she could entrust me to help her and send her 8-year-old younger sister to a relative's house. After hearing this, I accepted the job, and I really didn't like the behavior of the boss, so I rescued the 2 girls. Gildarts scratched his head and spoke helplessly. So that's it, I understand. I remember that the Ishgar continent now clearly prohibits the sale of personal contracts, right? In short, did the businessman break the law? In just a short moment, Evan figured out what happened, and at the same time, doubts arose in his heart. Since that businessman broke the law, why don't you ask the soldiers for help? Evan asked Gildarts the question in her heart. Are you kidding me? We're the mages of fairy tale. How can we ask soldiers for help? If the soldiers find out that I accidentally destroyed half of the town when I was on a job last time, then things won't be too good. When Gildarts heard the word soldier, his body trembled instinctively, and then he watched Evan preach seriously. This. Evan didn't know what to say. How should I put it? It's nonsense according to the logic of normal people, but according to Gildarts. To be precise, look at it according to the logic of fairy tale, this is very reasonable. It's like in One Piece, when Luffy encounters evil forces, he always finds a solution by himself, instead of daring to report to the marine. In short, I understand. Leave this matter to me. As Evan said, he flew to Makarov who was rushing towards this side, and whispered a few words. I see. Makarov heard that the magic power that was originally released dissipated instantly, and his figure became smaller and smaller. It quickly shrunk down to the size of a child, and with the help of Evan, he landed lightly on Gildarts' hunting ship. Sister! Sister! The giant has become a little old man. The 8 or 9-year-old girl looked at Makarov who suddenly became shorter than her, and immediately pulled her sister and said with a smile. Hush! That is Lord Mage. Don't be so rude. When the elder sister heard this, she immediately stopped the little girl's rudeness. It's okay, no problem. Makarov smiled at the pair of sisters with a kind face, and then looked at Gildarts. You made a big fuss this time. With his hands behind his back, Makarov said to Gildarts. Anyway, that's it. Guildmaster. I have no choice. That's why I came up with such a trick, and the boss is chasing us very closely, so I don't have time to explain it to you. Gildarts looked at Makarov scratching his scalp, helplessly explaining. I see. Makarov looked at Gildarts and smiled slightly. After making sure that Gildarts did not go the wrong way, Makarov was relieved. So Guildmaster, do you have any good solutions? Gildarts looked at the smiling Makarov and frowned. Usually, Makarov showed this kind of fox-like smile, and it seemed that he had found a good solution. Of course, although we can't ask soldiers for help, don't we have a better choice than soldiers? They are also mages, right? At least they use magic to do something wrong, right? I saw them use magic to run around on the street. Makarov smiled at Gildarts like an old fox. Of course Makarov saw the other party running around on the street, because he was also one of those who used magic to run around on the street. Ah! Guildmaster, you mean to ask them for help? Indeed, there is nothing that can help us more than them. Gildarts looked at Makarov and seemed to have thought of something. Evan looked at the two old foxes and looked at each other. He smiled secretly and said nothing. He probably also thought of what the two of them were thinking. 1 hour later. A flying vehicle slowly landed in the coastal town of Mon, and dozens of soldiers with magic props in their hands walked out of it. The difference between this group of soldiers and the soldiers of the kingdom is that they come from institutions with higher authority. It is a special hunting agency under the banner of the Magic Council, and it is a tracking soldier directly under the prison. Right now, there is nothing better than using these professionals. Chapter 50, Foss, the city at the entryway to the western arm of the kingdom. You are the merchant Cappuccino, correct? You are suspected of abusing magic power, come with us. The soldiers of the Magic Council surrounded the boss with few hairs on his head and his milk baby, and announced in a cold voice. Abusing magic power? Which of your eyes saw me abuse magic power? Besides, even if I abuse my magic power, didn't those people also abuse their magic power? The underground gangster with the same name as a certain coffee, Cappuccino, who is also the owner of countless nightclubs, stretched out his finger, pointed at Evan and others who called the police, and shouted that there was something in his heart. Hundreds of dissatisfied feelings. He turned into a giant and ran wildly in the streets, and fished a hunting ship out of the sea, and flew into the sky. Many people can testify. The soldiers turned around when they heard the words, looked at Evan and the others, and then the soldiers immediately turned their heads, as if they didn't see them. Stop talking nonsense, take him away. It's all over here, and you're still pointing at other people's problems. You don't have the heart to correct it. Although those mages have done a lot of outrageous things, they have a heart to correct themselves, which is better than you. The leading soldier looked at the boss in front of him with disdain, and thought, are you also called Fairy Tale? He gave the order with a cold expression. Not long after, the boss named Cappuccino and the mage named Milk Boy next to him were all handcuffed by the soldiers, and put on the back of the flying vehicle. Then Lord Makarov, we will retreat first and call for the exclusive search force. The leading soldier turned around and first bowed slightly to Makarov, which was the respect he should have for the 10 wizard saints. Immediately after, he walked up closer to Makarov and said in a low voice, Your Excellency Makarov, just come to us if you encounter any problems in the future. By the way, thank you for your help to Mr. Torch Endeavor, I can't repay you, but just ask me for what you have to do. Ahem, this is what should be done. Makarov, an old man, was very cheap in such cases. He was really happy in his heart, but he looked serious on the surface. Then we'll go first. There is no one in the prison now. We need to make up more points, or we won't be able to pass the assessment. The soldier captain whispered. Well, let's go, Makarov nodded, like a kind elder, smiling and preaching to the soldiers. This group of soldiers wearing robes with the logo of the Magic Council, after sweeping away these dark forces, bowed slightly to Makarov and the others to salute, and then hurried away on the battleship, seemingly in a hurry. Look. Just as the leading soldier said, they are busy arresting people now, and there is no time to waste. Things are settled, let's continue to set off. After the flying vehicle that Makarov was watching left, he said to Evan and the others. Okay. Evan nodded lightly, and the next step is to go to the station to buy a ticket, and then returned to the guild. Guild master, it seems that Gildarts hasn't returned yet. Just when everyone was about to leave, Dur glanced around and said to Makarov. That idiot Gildarts, ignore him, let's go. After hearing Ur's words, Makarov's face flashed with displeasure, and he planned to bring everyone back to the guild early. Guild master, wait for me. Just when everyone was about to leave, they saw Gildarts running towards them in a cloak. He quickly ran to the front of the crowd, panting and replied, it just so happens that all my jobs have been completed, let's go back together. Back to the guild. After hearing what Gildarts said, Evan let out a cry of surprise. Really? You still know how to go back to the guild? I thought you were going to live in other towns with those two girls. Ahaha. Although my charm is indeed invincible, they are still too small. After listening to Evan's words, Gildarts wiped the bright red lip marks on his cheeks with his cloak. The reward for finding a place to settle down is the proof of a real man. Makarov saw Gildarts approaching, and said to him. In short, today's job is completed very quickly, we don't need to waste time, let's return to the room, hurry up and set off. Okay. Gildarts nodded lightly in agreement. After everyone decided to leave, they first went back to the hotel and checked out. Originally, everyone thought that Gildarts would take a long time to complete the job. Now that the job has been completed ahead of schedule, there is no need to continue to stay. After everyone checked out, they walked directly towards the station. Because Mon is a coastal town, there are generally more ships, so there is no train station, so everyone can only walk to the next town to take the train. Fortunately, the town with a train station is not far from Mon. Led by Makarov and Gildarts, Evan and the others browsed through a high mountain before finally arriving at Foss, city at the entryway to the western arm of the kingdom. Hey! Grey, Grey! Not long after Evan and the others walked in the town, Lion seemed to have discovered something, and pulled Grey to whisper. Look at the little girl over there. She looks so cute. She has curly blue hair, and she's wearing a small umbrella on sunny days. What? So. After Grey heard what Lion said, followed Lion's line of sight, and there was indeed a blue-haired girl who was walking forward with a package in her hand. Grey looked the girl up and down. After that, he shook his head. Damn it, Grey, don't you know how cute that girl is? After hearing Grey's words, Lion seemed to have received a big blow. Hey! The blue-haired girl seemed to have heard Grey and the others' voices and forgot to come here. The moment her eyes fell on Grey, she felt her heart tremble, and then the girl blushed. Turning his face, he walked away quickly, muttering in his mouth, Jovia can't be tempted by the beauty on the road, and hurry up and send the things to uncle. Grey, look quickly, she's looking at me. She's looking at me. And Lion, who happened to see the scene, pulled Grey into excitement. Ah, yes, he saw you, you are awesome. Grey seemed to be coaxing a child. Haha. Evan, who was on the side, also noticed the scene in front of him. As for the relationship between Grey, Lion and that blue-haired girl who was very anxious, as if she had something urgent to do, Evan was helpless. Let everything be as it pleases. Anyway, they will meet eventually. After Evan withdrew his gaze, his eyes fell on a boy who passed by him and looked slightly older than him. Evan reached out and grabbed the other's wrist, and said in a cold voice, Hey! You'd better take out what you stole before I get mad. Hey! The boy's face changed suddenly after hearing Evan's words, beads of sweat rolled down his forehead, and a trace of disbelief flashed in his heart. How is it possible? Could it be that I was discovered?